Hi guys and welcome to Quiet Voice podcast channel. Tonight we're stepping into a frozen winter night in Prague. In the year 1878, when snow rests heavily on tiled roofs and lanterns glow like small amber stars across the old town, you stand beneath a sky the colour of cold iron. Snow falls in slow, patient flakes, settling on your coat, your shoulders, and the narrow brim of your hat. Ahead, the city seems half awake and half dreaming. Stone towers rise through the mist. Chimneys breathe pale smoke into the darkness. Somewhere beyond the crooked houses, a church bell marks the hour, each note deep and round, fading gently into the winter air. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And as you grow comfortable, leave a comment telling us where you are listening from and what time it is there. Perhaps it is late evening beside a quiet window, or perhaps morning light is already reaching your room. Wherever you are, draw the blanket a little closer. Now, it's time to rest. Your boots press into fresh snow as you enter the old town. The streets are narrower than they appear on a modern map, and the buildings lean toward one another as though exchanging private news. Their upper floors seem almost close enough to touch. Wooden signs hang above shop doors, rocking faintly whenever the wind slips through the lane. The cold is immediate. It pinches your cheeks and makes every breath visible. You smell coal smoke, damp wool, horse sweat, and the faint sweetness of baked bread escaping from a nearby doorway. That bread is a dangerous little temptation on a night like this. History may be grand, but hunger remains wonderfully practical. Prague in 1878 belongs to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a vast and complicated realm ruled from Vienna. Records confirm that the city is growing quickly during these years. New factories, workshops, schools, and railway connections are changing daily life, yet the old town still carries the shape of centuries. Medieval lanes remain crowded beneath Gothic towers, and ancient courtyards hide behind heavy doors. You pass one such door, dark wood reinforced with iron. Frost has formed around its metal latch. A servant opens it briefly, releasing a rectangle of golden light onto the snow. For one warm second, you see a staircase, a hanging coat, and steam rising from a kitchen somewhere within. Then the door closes, and the street returns to blue darkness. Lanterns stand at measured distances along the road. Though their light is weak by modern standards, each flame creates a small island of safety, surrounded by long shadows. Beyond those circles, doorways become caves and alleyways disappear completely. The city does not blaze through the night, it glimmers. A carriage moves toward you, its wheels grinding through packed snow. The driver sits hunched beneath a thick cloak, reins held stiffly in gloved hands. Two horses lower their heads against the wind, their breath pours from their nostrils in white clouds, and tiny bells on the harness give a tired silver jingle. You step aside, close to a wall rough with age. The carriage passes slowly, carrying someone wealthy enough to avoid walking. Inside, behind a fogged window, you glimpse the pale outline of a face. It vanishes before you can decide whether it belongs to a merchant, an official, or a woman returning from an evening visit. Most people travel on foot. A woman in a dark shawl hurries past with a basket pressed against her hip. A boy follows her, carrying a bundle of split wood. Two workers walk together, speaking quietly, their heavy coats dusted with snow. The city may look romantic from a distance, but winter demands constant labour. Fires need fuel, animals need feeding, water must be carried, clothes must be dried. Nothing becomes easy simply because the rooftops look beautiful. Oddly enough, Some residents believe that keeping a piece of bread in a pocket may protect a traveller from misfortune. Such customs survive beside modern science, newspaper offices, and railway timetables. Prague is full of these gentle contradictions. A person may discuss industrial progress in the afternoon and still avoid a certain doorway after dark because an aunt once called it unlucky. The snow thickens. It softens the scrape of wheels and the footsteps of strangers. Even voices seem wrapped in cloth. You notice how the city changes under this white covering. Broken paving stones disappear. Mud freezes solid. The crooked street becomes smooth and almost graceful. Yet beneath the beauty lies inconvenience. Snow blocks gutters, ice forms on steps, roofs grow dangerously heavy, shopkeepers sweep their entrances again and again, muttering at the sky with the patient irritation of people who know the sky will not apologize. A small bakery remains open through the glass. Candles shine against rows of loaves. The baker moves behind the counter with flour on his sleeves. His assistant carries a tray toward the back room, where heat rolls from a brick oven. You pause near the window, enjoying warmth that does not quite reach you. Nearby, a newspaper seller calls out the latest reports, though fewer people stop as the night grows colder. Printed news has become an important force in the city, especially as political and cultural debates spread among Czech and German-speaking communities. Scholars bicker over how strongly ordinary residents identify with one national cause or another during this period. Personal loyalty may depend on family, trade, neighbourhood, education, or simple necessity. History prefers neat labels. Daily life rarely cooperates. Above you, a clock face emerges through the falling snow. Its hands move steadily, indifferent to frozen fingers and late deliveries. Beneath it, a watchman crosses the street carrying a lantern and a wooden staff. He nods once as he passes, not unfriendly, but not eager for conversation. You continue deeper into the old town. The wind drops for a moment, and the silence becomes almost complete. Snow gathers on carved saints, window ledges, market stalls, and the shoulders of stone angels. Every surface seems to hold its breath. Then another bell sounds, farther away this time. You follow it through the whitened streets, while lanterns flicker ahead, one by one, guiding you into the heart of the winter city. The lane bends gently, and a moving glow appears at the far end, rising and falling with the steady rhythm of footsteps. A man approaches beneath a dark wool coat, carrying a long pole over one shoulder and a small flame protected inside a metal lantern. He is one of the city lamplighters, beginning his evening round while frost gathers along the edges of roofs and doorways. You slow your pace to watch him work. Each street lamp waits above the pavement like a glass box filled with darkness. The lamplighter stops beneath one, plants his boots firmly in the snow, and raises the pole. A narrow hook opens the small door in the lamp housing. Another movement guides the flame toward the gas burner. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a soft burst of light blooms behind the glass. The effect is modest, yet almost magical. Warm colour spills across a patch of wall. Ice crystals shine on a window frame. A painted shop sign becomes visible overhead. The lamplighter closes the glass door, lowers his pole, and walks toward the next waiting lamp. Prague has used gas lighting for several decades by 1878. Historical records confirm that gas lamps have transformed the way people experience the city at night. Streets once ruled almost completely by darkness now remain active for longer hours. Shops can welcome late customers. Carriages move with greater confidence. Watchmen can inspect corners that candlelight never reached. Still, the illumination is far from complete. Each lamp brightens only a limited circle, leaving broad stretches of shadow between one flame and the next. You move through alternating bands of gold and blue, seeing faces clearly for a few steps, then losing them again. The lamplighter works with calm precision. He knows every post, every stubborn hinge, every burner that needs an extra moment. His route may include dozens of lamps, and winter makes the task harder. Metal stiffens in the cold, glass gathers soot, snow hides uneven stones beneath his feet. Yet the city expects each flame to appear at the proper hour. No crowd applauds him, no official follows with a medal. He simply carries light from street to street, which is a rather noble occupation for someone probably thinking mainly about supper. You hear the gentle hiss of gas within the nearest lamp. It is quieter than the wind and sharper than a candle flame. The odour is faint but noticeable, mixing with smoke from household fires. Gas lighting offers convenience, though it also carries risk. Leaks may cause sickness, fire, or explosion. Residents welcome the brighter streets while remaining wary of the invisible fuel running beneath them. A curious footnote concerns the complaints made about early public lighting. Some citizens fear that brighter streets encourage people to remain outdoors too late. Others argue that nighttime illumination weakens morality by allowing taverns, theatres, and social gatherings to continue long past the hour when respectable people are expected to be asleep. Human beings have always found a way to blame new technology for late nights. The lamplighter reaches a broader street where several businesses remain open. A bookseller pulls shutters across his display window. A tailor stands in his doorway, brushing loose thread from his sleeves. A woman carrying folded linens pauses beneath a newly lit lamp and checks the road before crossing. The flame changes how each person moves. Under its glow, strangers study one another more easily. Clothing reveals occupation and wealth. A polished coat suggests comfort. Frayed cuffs suggest long use. Mud on boots marks a difficult journey. Night no longer hides every social distinction. You follow the lamplighter at a respectful distance. His shadow stretches ahead of him, thin and enormous, climbing the walls as each lamp comes alive. Sometimes he looks upward to inspect the flame. Sometimes he wipes the glass with a cloth. At one post, the burner refuses to catch, and tries again. The protected flame trembles near the opening, but the lamp remains dark. He adjusts a valve, taps the casing, and raises the pole once more. A small flash finally appears. He watches it carefully until the flame steadies. Nearby, two children stare from an upper window, their faces pressed close to the glass, leaving pale clouds from their breath. To them, the lamplighter may seem like a magician who commands fire with a pole. Their mother draws them away and closes the curtain, perhaps deciding that wonder is acceptable only until bedtime. The route continues toward a small square lined with inns and workshops. Lanterns hang beside several entrances, each belonging to the owner rather than the city. Some use oil, others rely on candles. Their flames burn with different colours and strengths, creating a patchwork of light rather than a single orderly system. No agreement has been reached on whether public lighting changes crime as dramatically as city officials often claim. Some scholars argue that better visibility discourages theft and assault. Others note that criminals adapt, choosing darker lanes or working beneath the confidence that busy streets provide. Light may reveal danger, but it cannot remove every human intention. A patrolman greets the lamplighter with a brief nod. Their duties overlap without becoming the same. One maintains visibility, the other maintains order. Both depend on routine, patience, and a willingness to walk through unpleasant weather while most residents seek warmth indoors. The snow begins to reflect the lamps more strongly. Every bright circle appears doubled, once in the glass and once on the white ground. The city seems richer in light than it truly is. Roof edges gleam. Icicles catch amber flashes. Even the frozen ruts left by carriage wheels shine like narrow ribbons. A gust of wind rushes along the street. Several flames flicker behind their glass shields. One shrinks to a weak blue point, then recovers. The lamplighter notices immediately. He steps back, studies the lamp, and waits until the flame grows steady again. His work is not only to ignite the city, but to trust that each small fire will endure. Farther ahead, the final lamps of the route stand unlit, dark shapes against the snowfall. He walks toward them without hurry, carrying his pole like a staff and his sheltered flame like a private star. You continue beside the spreading glow, listening to the soft hiss above you and the measured crunch of boots below, while the old town slowly gathers enough light to welcome the night. A curtain shifts behind a pane clouded by frost, and for an instant you catch the shape of someone standing close to the glass. The figure disappears almost at once, leaving only a pale oval where warm breath has touched the window. You move along the row of houses, noticing how each one keeps its own small world hidden within stone walls. Outside, the cold presses against shutters and doors. Inside, families gather around stoves, servants carry water, shopkeepers count coins, and children resist sleep with the quiet determination known to every century. One window stands uncovered on an upper floor. Through the patterned frost, you see a room lit by 2 candles. A woman sits at a table repairing a shirt. Her needle rises and falls in steady rhythm. Beside her, a man studies a newspaper, holding it close to the flame. A young girl rests her head on folded arm while pretending not to be tired. The furniture is plain. A painted chest stands against one wall. A ceramic stove occupies another corner, giving off the heat that makes the room habitable. Such stoves are common in Prague homes, especially where open fireplaces would waste precious fuel. Records confirm that tiled stoves can hold warmth for hours, slowly releasing it into the room long after the fire has settled. The stove is more than an object, it is the center of winter life. Wet gloves are placed nearby, boots stand in a careful row. A pot of soup remains warm on its surface, chairs gather close around it, leaving the edges of the room in coolest shadow. Anyone who claims that furniture placement is merely decorative has never faced a January night with limited firewood. You pass another house where the ground floor serves as both shop and home. A sign above the entrance shows a painted key, marking the trade of a locksmith. The workshop has closed, but a weak light remains behind the shutters. Through a narrow gap, you glimpse the master examining a metal lock while an apprentice sweeps filings from the floor. The apprentice is likely younger than he appears. Long hours, smoke, and cold can add years to a face. He sleeps somewhere nearby, perhaps in a small chamber above the shop or on a straw mattress in a corner. Work and domestic life often share the same walls. Privacy is a luxury, and silence is rarer still. A baby begins crying in the next building. The sound passes easily through old masonry and wooden floors. A chair scrapes. Someone murmurs. The crying fades, returns briefly, then softens into a low complaint. You imagine the room without seeing it clearly. A mother walks slowly near the stove, rocking the child beneath a wool blanket. Another family member may be sleeping in the same space. Heat must be conserved, so people gather where warmth is strongest. Bedrooms in the modern sense are not available to everyone. The wealthier houses tell a different story. Behind a broad window, heavy curtains frame a parlour filled with polished furniture. A chandelier hangs above a carpet. Porcelain figures decorate a cabinet. A servant enters carrying a tray with cups and a covered pot. Her steps are quiet, though the tray gives a small silver rattle. The family may speak of music, business, or politics while the servant thinks about the stairs she must climb, the kitchen she must return to, and the hour when she may finally remove her shoes. Comfort depends upon the labour that is often kept out of sight. One scandalous aside concerns household gossip. Servants frequently know more about a family than distant relatives do. They hear arguments through doors, notice unpaid bills, observe secret visitors, and remember which guest receives the best wine. Employers demand discretion, yet information travels through kitchens, courtyards, laundries, and market stalls with impressive speed. Prague may be covered in snow, but rumour never freezes. A maid opens a rear door and throws a basin of used water into the yard. The liquid strikes the snow and darkens it instantly. She shivers, pulls her shawl tighter, and vanishes indoors. Waste disposal remains an ordinary problem in dense neighbourhoods. Water must be carried in, and dirty water must be carried out. Pipes and modern sanitation are spreading unevenly, leaving many households dependent on wells, pumps, courtyards, and exhausting routine. You hear dishes clinking in a narrow building near the corner. The scent of cabbage drifts from a vent, mixed with onion and animal fat. Supper is simple for many families. Bread, soup, potatoes, and seasonal vegetables form the dependable base of a meal. Meat may appear less often, especially in poorer homes. A boy leans from a doorway and shakes crumbs from a cloth. Sparrows descend quickly, pecking at the snow with sharp little movements. The boy watches them for a moment. Then his father calls from within. The door closes, cutting off a burst of warmth and conversation. Across the lane, a widow rents a single room to two young workers. You cannot see them, but their voices carry through a cracked shutter. One laughs, the other coughs repeatedly. Lodging is crowded in districts where wages remain low and housing demand rises. Beds may be shared in shifts by people whose working hours do not match. Arguments split along several lines over how much industrial growth improves ordinary family life during this period. Some historians emphasize rising opportunity, better transport, and wider access to education. Others point to overcrowding, long working days, unstable wages, and diseases that spread easily through cramped rooms. Progress arrives, but it does not knock equally on every door. A small hand appears against a frosted pane at street level. The fingers trace a circle through the ice, clearing a tiny window onto the night. A child peers out at you with serious curiosity. You raise one gloved hand in greeting. The child smiles, then turns suddenly as someone speaks from behind. A curtain falls across the glass. The room becomes hidden once more, yet its warmth seems to linger in your imagination. You continue beneath dark roofs where hundreds of private lives unfold at once. Needles move through cloth, ledgers close, soup cools, prayers are whispered, children settle beneath blankets, servants finish one task and begin another. The old town appears silent from the street, but behind its frosted windows, the night is full of work, worry, tenderness, and the soft persistence of ordinary life. The street opens suddenly, and the buildings release you into a broad white space where the snow lies almost untouched beneath the night sky. The old town square stretches before you, immense after the narrow lanes, its towers and facades rising like a silent audience around the frozen ground. Your steps sound smaller here, The wind has room to move across the square, sweeping loose snow into pale ribbons that curl around market stalls and stone steps. Roofs tilt under soft white weight. Windows shine at different heights, some bright and welcoming, others dark as sealed boxes. Above everything, the twin towers of the great church stand sharply against the clouds, their pointed roofs collecting frost. You pass near the edge of the square and let your eyes adjust. The place is not empty, though it first appears so. A porter crosses with a sack over one shoulder. Two women hurry beneath shared shawls. A carriage waits near an inn, its horses stamping at the frozen ground. Near a doorway, a man brushes snow from a wooden sign with a short broom, clearly unwilling to let winter interfere with advertising. The square has been a centre of trade, ceremony, punishment, celebration, and argument for centuries. Records confirm that merchants from many regions have gathered here since the Middle Ages, bringing cloth, grain, metal goods, spices, livestock, and news. By 1878, some older market functions have changed, but the square still serves as one of the great public stages of Prague. Every wall seems to remember something. You walk toward the astronomical clock mounted on the southern side of the old town hall. Its dark face emerges from the stone like a complicated dream of circles, numbers, and moving symbols. Even at night, a few people glance upward, as though expecting time itself to perform for them. The clock has measured the passing hours for generations. Its mechanism has been repaired, altered, mired, and occasionally misunderstood. To a visitor, it may seem less like an instrument and more like a puzzle designed by someone who disliked simple answers. A curious footnote tells of legends claiming that the clockmaker was blinded so he could never create another masterpiece. The tale is dramatic, gloomy, and almost certainly shaped by later storytelling rather than dependable evidence. Prague has always understood that a beautiful machine becomes even more memorable when someone adds a tragic rumour. Snow rests on the carved figures around the clock. Their faces appear softer under the frost. A nearby lantern throws uneven light across the stone, making the statues seem to shift whenever the flame trembles. You move farther into the square. The ground beneath your boots is packed hard where carts and pedestrians have crossed during the day. In other places, snow covers the paving stones completely. You test each step carefully. A fall here would be historically authentic, though not specially dignified. On one side, elegant houses display painted fronts and decorative gables. Their colours are subdued by darkness, yet hints of cream, faded red, pale green, and ochre remain visible beneath the lamps. Each building carries layers of alteration. Windows have been widened, interiors divided, roofs repaired, signs replaced. The square may look ancient, but it is never truly still. A hotel entrance glows near the corner. Well-dressed guests step down from a carriage while an attendant receives their luggage. Across the square, a labourer pushes a handcart through the snow. The contrast is immediate. Public spaces allow different classes to occupy the same ground, though not with the same comfort. A group of students passes close to you, speaking with animated gestures. One carries books tied with a strap. Another wears a coat too thin for the weather, but seems determined not to admit it. They may be discussing literature, politics, examinations, or the unbearable stupidity of a professor. Some academic traditions remain wonderfully stable. The clock strikes. The sound rolls across the square and returns from the surrounding walls. Pigeons stir beneath a roof ledge. A horse lifts its head. Conversations pause for a moment, then begin again. Near the town hall, a watchman stands beneath the shelter of an arch. His lantern rests beside him. From that position, he can observe much of the square while avoiding the worst of the wind. He watches the students, the carriage, the porter, and you, giving each the same calm suspicion. The open space encourages public life, yet it also exposes everyone to observation. Who meets whom? Who enters which building? Who leaves late? Who wears expensive cloth? And who appears nervous can all become material for gossip. Scholars remain divided over how ordinary residents understood the square during the late 19th century. Some view it mainly as a historic symbol increasingly connected with Czech national identity. Others stress its practical role as a commercial and administrative centre shared by people of different languages, loyalties, and backgrounds. The stones support both interpretations without offering an opinion. You approach the monument area near the centre. Though the square in 1878 does not yet display every feature familiar to later visitors, the space feels more open, allowing your gaze to travel freely between church towers, town hall walls, and rows of houses. A vendor has left several covered stalls near one side. Their wooden frames are locked for the night, but traces of the day remain. Straw lies scattered in the snow. A cabbage leaf has frozen near a wheel rut. A broken cord trails from a post. The grand square carries humble evidence of buying, telling, lifting, spilling, and sweeping. The scent changes as you pass an inn. Roasted meat, hot beer, smoke, and damp wool drift through the door whenever someone enters. Laughter rises briefly, then disappears as the door closes. Outside, the cold sharpens again. A priest crosses toward the church, holding his coat tightly at the throat. Behind him, an elderly woman moves more slowly, placing each foot with care. She touches the wall for balance as she reaches the steps. No one hurries her. The square has witnessed kings and rebels, yet tonight it quietly accommodates one cautious journey across the ice. You turn in a slow circle. The towers seem to lean inward above you. Bells sleep within them. Clocks continue their unseen labour. Lamps burn against the snow. Human figures pass across the white ground, briefly visible and then absorbed by distant shadows. The square feels ceremonial even when nothing ceremonial is happening. It gathers the city into one open breath, holding commerce, faith, memory, ambition, and ordinary inconvenience beneath the same winter sky. You continue across its frozen centre, while the clock keeps watch, and the vast ring of buildings stands quietly around you, preserving the night in stone. The first warning comes as a low wooden groan, followed by the sharp strike of iron against stone. A carriage emerges from the haze at the far side of the square, its lamp swaying beside the driver like two tired eyes. You hear it before you see every detail. The wheels grind through snow that has been pressed into hard ridges by a day of traffic. Each turn produces a rough, uneven rhythm. Iron rims scrape against buried paving stones, then slide briefly over ice. The horses pull with lowered heads, their shoulders working beneath dark harness leather, polished by use. The driver leans forward on his raised seat. Snow clings to the seams of his coat and gathers across the brim of his hat. He keeps both hands tight around the reins, guiding the team toward the clearest part of the road. A narrow street waits beyond the square, and the carriage must enter it at an angle. The driver gives the soft command. One horse steps carefully, the other slips. Its front leg slides sideways, and the entire vehicle jerks. For a moment, every sound seems to stop except the frantic clatter of hooves searching for purchase. The driver pulls the reins without panic. The horse recovers, plants its feet, and stands trembling while white breath pours from its nostrils. No one applauds, though several pedestrians have paused to watch. In winter, survival often receives only a relieved nod. Records confirm that horse-drawn transport remains essential to Prague in 1878. Private carriages carry wealthy families and officials, while hired vehicles serve travelers, merchants, and anyone able to pay. Delivery carts move food, coal, timber, cloth, and countless other necessities through the city. Horses are not decorative figures in this world, they are engines with muscles, moods, appetites, and an inconvenient habit of becoming frightened. You step aside as a smaller hired carriage approaches. Its body is painted dark green, though road dirt hides much of the colour. A passenger sits inside beneath a fur-lined cloak, one gloved hand resting against the fogged window. The carriage rocks with every frozen rut. Comfort, it seems, is a flexible word. The driver raises his whip but does not strike. He flicks it above the horses to encourage them. Their ears turn backward at the sound. Leather straps creak. Metal rings knock against the harness. The wheels continue their stubborn rotation. Winter travel requires preparation. Horses may wear specially fitted shoes with roughened surfaces or small projecting points to improve their grip on ice. Sand, ashes, or gravel can be scattered on dangerous slopes. Even with such measures, a frozen street remains unpredictable. A curious footnote concerns the blankets used for waiting horses. Drivers often cover their animals while standing outside inns or houses, not merely from kindness but from practical necessity. A sweating horse can chill quickly in severe weather. The blanket protects valuable strength, though it also gives the patient animal the appearance of an elderly relative waiting outside the theatre. Near an inn, 3 carriages stand in a row. The horses stamp and shift beneath heavy coverings. One nudges another with its nose. A stable boy carries a bucket between them, moving carefully to avoid hooves. He checks a strap, rubs a horse behind the ear, and speaks in a calm voice that seems more affectionate than anything heard between the drivers. The stable yard behind the inn is busy despite the hour. A groom shovels dirty snow away from the entrance. Another man carries hay toward a covered shed. The smell of straw, manure, leather, and warm animal breath rises into the cold air. This scent is part of every large 19th century city. Streets depend on horses, and horses leave evidence of their presence. Teams must be fed, watered, housed, groomed, shored, rested, and replaced when illness or injury takes them from work. Urban movement rests upon an enormous hidden system of care. A delivery cart comes slowly around the corner, loaded with barrels secured by rope. The driver walks beside it rather than sitting above, perhaps to reduce the strain on the horse. He keeps one hand on the cart frame as the wheels descend a slight slope. The left wheel strikes a patch of ice. The cart shifts towards the curb, and the barrels roll against their bindings with a deep, hollow knock. The driver pushes hard against the side while the horse braces. For several tense seconds, wood, rope, animal strength, and human effort struggle against gravity. Then the wheel catches in a rut and the cart straightens. The driver exhales, pats the horse on the neck, and continues. His evening has provided enough excitement, and history has not even offered him a warm drink. Arguments split among historians over how much urban transport improves daily mobility for ordinary people during this period. Some emphasize the expansion of hired carriage services and organized public vehicles. Others note that cost, distance, and limited routes still keep many residents on foot. The streets are increasingly connected, but access to that connection remains unequal. You hear a faster vehicle approaching. This carriage belongs to someone impatient or important, which are often closely related conditions. Its horses trot briskly despite the ice. The driver rings a handbell and calls for pedestrians to clear the road. People move quickly toward the walls. A woman pulls a child beside her. A porter lifts his basket higher. The carriage passes in a burst of snow, and its lamps flashing across faces and windows. The speed feels reckless, yet the driver manages the turn with practiced skill. The wheels slide slightly, then catch. The carriage disappears into a darker street, leaving behind the fading beat of hooves. Accidents are an accepted danger. A broken axle can overturn a vehicle. A frightened horse can bolt through a crowd. Ice can send wheels sideways. Narrow lanes leave little room for escape. Drivers depend on experience, good animals, maintained equipment, and a generous portion of luck. You continue near the edge of the roadway, alert to every approaching sound. A heavy freight wagon passes with 4 horses. Its wheels are broader, its frame reinforced, and its pace painfully slow. The driver walks at the front, leading the first pair around a curve. Another man pushes from behind when the rear wheels become trapped in packed snow. The wagon carries coal. Black dust stains the canvas covering and marks the workers' gloves across the city. Households and businesses depend on such deliveries to keep stoves burning. Every warm room begins somewhere with hard labour, a loaded wagon, and a team straining through winter streets. The horses move forward together. Their harness chains tighten. The wagon groans, shudders, and finally climbs free of the frozen hollow. As it passes, one horse turns its dark eye toward you. The gaze is calm, almost thoughtful. Then the animal lowers its head and continues pulling, carrying heat toward unseen homes, while iron wheels carve fresh lines through the ice. A row of market stalls stands beneath sloping roofs, each one surrounded by baskets, crates, folded cloth, and the tired movements of people eager to finish their work before the cold deepens. You enter the market lane as merchants begin closing for the night. Wooden shutters swing inward, canvas coverings are pulled tight, coins are counted beneath weak lamps, while customers make final choices with the determined seriousness of people who know tomorrow may bring higher prices, worse weather, or both. A vegetable seller lifts cabbages from a table and places them into a straw-lined crate. Their outer leaves are dark green and stiff with frost. Beside them lie carrots, onions, turnips, and potatoes, all dependable foods that survive storage better than delicate summer produce. The seller works quickly but carefully. Anything left exposed may freeze too hard, split, or become useless. He checks each cabbage with both hands, removes damaged leaves, and stacks the best heads near the bottom. Records confirm that winter markets remain essential to urban life in Prague during the late 19th century. Most households cannot store large quantities of fresh food, and many residents visit sellers frequently for bread, vegetables, dairy goods, fuel, and small household necessities. The market is not merely a place of commerce. It is also a place where news travels, reputations rise, debts are remembered, and arguments become public entertainment. A fish seller drains water from a shallow wooden tub. The remaining fish lie packed in cold straw and crushed ice. His apron is stiff, his fingers red, and his expression suggests that he has heard every complaint a customer can invent. A woman examines one fish by lifting its gill. She asks the price. He answers. She offers less. He refuses with wounded dignity. She turns away. He calls her back. The bargain continues in a low, serious murmur, as though both parties are negotiating the borders of a kingdom rather than supper. You pass slowly, listening to the careful rhythm of buying and selling. Prices are rarely simple. A familiar customer may receive better terms. A wealthy stranger may be charged more. A widow known to the neighborhood may be allowed to pay later. Trust becomes a kind of currency, though it is harder to weigh than flour. At the next stall, a woman folds lengths of wool cloth into neat squares. Dark blue, browns, grey, and muted red disappear one by one into a chest. She brushes snow from the lid before closing it. Winter cloth is valuable. A thick skirt, coat lining, shawl, or blanket can decide whether a person remains merely uncomfortable or becomes dangerously cold. Yet good fabric costs money, and poorer households repair garments again and again. You notice a pair of mittens hanging from a nail. One thumb has been mended with yarn of a different colour. They are not elegant, but they are warm, which is a more persuasive quality in January, oddly enough. Some sellers keep small charms hidden beneath their counters, believing these may encourage good trade or protect against dishonest customers. A coin from a lucky transaction, a dried herb, or a tiny carved object may remain tucked beside the scales. Business depends on arithmetic, but a little superstition apparently improves the accounting. A baker arrives with an empty handcart and begins collecting unsold loaves from a stall. The best bread has already gone. What remains is slightly hard, unevenly shaped, or darkened at the crust. Some loaves will return to the bakery. Others may be sold cheaply to labourers or given to animals. Nothing is wasted casually when grain, fuel, and labour all carry value. The baker tears a small piece from one loaf and tastes it. He chews thoughtfully, then places the loaf in a separate basket. Perhaps it is still suitable for his own table. Perhaps he is simply hungry. Professional judgment and appetite often cooperate. Farther along, a dairy seller wraps a crock in thick cloth. Butter and cheese handle cold better than many foods. But sudden freezing can alter texture and quality. She packs each container with straw, creating a soft barrier against the night. Her young assistant rubs his hands together and stamps his boots. He has spent hours carrying pails, wiping counters, fetching change, and answering instructions. His nose is red, and his patience has clearly entered its final stage. The seller gives him a small cup of warm liquid from a covered pot, and drinks it quickly. His shoulders relax. For a few seconds, the entire market seems kinder. A coal merchant closes a heavier stall near the wall. Black dust covers the floor around him, staining the snow grey. Small households buy fuel in modest amounts, sometimes only enough for a day or two. The poorest customers may choose between heating and food, a decision no amount of picturesque snowfall can make gentle. The merchant measures coal with a metal scoop and empties the last purchase into a sack. A thin man pays with several carefully counted coins. The sack is not full. The merchant looks at the money, then adds one extra scoop without comment. The customer nods once. Neither man turns the moment into a performance. Scholars continue to debate how often informal generosity softened the harshness of urban poverty. Some historians find evidence of neighborhood credit, charitable habits, and mutual assistance. Others warn that such acts were irregular and could never replace dependable wages or public support. Kindness matters, but it cannot always carry a household through winter. A spice seller secures tiny drawers within a painted cabinet. When one drawer opens, the air fills briefly with pepper, cinnamon, dried peel, and cloves. The scent feels almost luxurious against the cold. Only small amounts are needed to change a meal. A pinch of spice can make preserved food more appealing and lend celebration to an ordinary evening. Yet imported flavourings remain costly enough that many people use them sparingly. You watch the seller count paper packets and lock them inside ale. The key hangs from a chain beneath his coat. He checks the lock twice. Nearby, a poultry cage gives a sudden flutter. Two hens shift beneath a cloth covering, making soft, irritated noises. The merchant speaks to them in a soothing tone while securing the door. Animals brought to market must also survive the cold. Their bodies become merchandise, but they still feel fear, hunger, and discomfort. The merchant knows that a sick or injured bird loses value, so care and profit point in the same direction, at least for tonight. The final customers hurry through the lane. A maid buys onions and a small bundle of herbs. An elderly man chooses a candle. A mother counts coins beside a flower stall while her daughter holds an empty basket. A student spends too long deciding whether he can afford smoked sausage, then purchases bread instead and attempts to look philosophical about it. One by one, the lamps above the stalls go dark. Merchants lift boxes onto carts. Ropes are tightened, scales are folded away, scraps are swept into piles. The market loses its colour and becomes a line of closed wooden shapes beneath the snow. You hear wheels begin to turn as the first cart departs. Another follows, then another, each carrying unsold goods, empty baskets, tired workers, and the private calculation of profit or loss. The lane grows wider as people leave. A final seller checks his stall, pulls the shutter closed, and presses the lock into place. He places both hands against the wood, testing it, then turns toward home with an empty basket on his arm. Behind him, frozen cabbage leaves scrape across the stones in the wind. The market has finished speaking for the day, but its bargains, favours, shortages, and small disappointments travel outward into hundreds of kitchens, where the goods of the evening will become warmth, supper, and another night endured. A narrow doorway opens beside you, and the smell of warm broth reaches the street with surprising strength. Onion, root vegetables, toasted bread, and wood smoke mingle in the cold air. A woman steps outside to shake snow from a small rug, then notices you standing near the wall. She gives you a brief, practical look. The door remains open just long enough for you to see a steep staircase, a row of boots, and a kitchen glowing at the back of the house. Heat escapes across the threshold. It touches your face and then vanishes when the woman closes the door. Your mind follows the warmth inside. You enter the house in imagination, passing beneath a low beam worn smooth by many hands. The passage is narrow, and the floorboards complain softly under each step. A wooden peg holds coats heavy with melted snow. Beneath them, a shallow tray catches water from boots. The kitchen occupies the warmest part of the home. A ceramic stove stands against the wall, its surface decorated with faded blue patterns. A pot rests nearby, sending up thin curls of steam. The room is not large, but every corner serves a purpose. A table fills the centre. Its top bears scratches, stains, and pale marks left by years of chopping, kneading, writing, sewing, and family argument. 4 chairs surround it, though one is smaller than the others. A bench runs along the wall for anyone who arrives late or loses the silent contest for the best seat. You stand near the stove while supper takes shape. The mother stirs the pot with a wooden spoon. She lifts it, tastes the broth, and adds a pinch of salt from a small covered dish. Salt is valuable enough to be used carefully, but bland soup after a long winter day would test even the most peaceful household. The father sits near the window, cutting a loaf into thick slices. His hands are rough from work. The knife moves slowly because the crust has hardened in the cold. He places the pieces into a basket lined with cloth. 2 children wait nearby. The younger one watches the bread with intense devotion. The older child is meant to be arranging spoons, but keeps turning toward the stove. Hunger makes poor assistance of almost everyone. Records confirm that soup, bread, potatoes, cabbage, and other sturdy foods form the centre of many modest urban meals during this period. These ingredients are affordable, filling, and suited to storage through winter. Meat may flavour the pot without appearing in generous pieces. A small bone, a strip of fat, or yesterday's leftovers can give richness to several servings. The mother removes the lid. Steam fills the room and clouds the nearest window. Inside the pot, potatoes and turnips drift through a broth, darkened with onion. A few pieces of sausage appear near the surface. watched by every child at the table with the concentration of trained scholars. The father notices. He stirs the pot once before serving, distributing the pieces more evenly. Justice has many forms, and tonight it uses a ladle. You take an imagined place near the bench as bowls are set down. No one begins immediately. The family waits until the father lowers his head. A short prayer follows, spoken quietly, not as ceremony for strangers, but as part of the household rhythm. Then the spoons move. The first taste is simple and hot. Pepper warms the tongue. The vegetables are soft, almost falling apart. Bread absorbs the broth and becomes heavier in the hand. After the cold streets, the meal feels far richer than its ingredients suggest. The children eat. Children eat quickly. Their mother tells them to slow down. They slow down for 3 spoonfuls. The younger child drops a piece of potato onto the table, looks around, then returns it to the bowl with great discretion. No one comments. A household that wastes food over minor questions of dignity may not survive January with much elegance. A curious footnote concerns the use of heated bricks or stones at night. Some families warm them near the stove, wrap them in cloth, and place them in beds before sleeping. The method brings temporary comfort to cold sheets, although choosing a brick that is too hot can transform bedtime into an unnecessary lesson about caution. The father asks about the day. The older child reports that a teacher assigned additional reading. The complaint is delivered with deep personal sorrow. The mother continues eating without sympathy. Education is valued, but students have always suspected that teachers enjoy creating misery for its own sake. The younger child describes a dog seen near a shop. This story takes much longer than unexpected. The dog was brown, then perhaps grey. It carried something that may have been a glove, a rag, or a piece of bread. It barked once, or possibly twice. The exact details remain unstable, but the importance of the event is never questioned. The adults listen while exchanging glances. Outside, a cart passes, and the window trembles slightly in its frame. The room grows quiet until the sound fades. Dense city homes are rarely isolated from the movements around them. Footsteps overhead, voices through walls, and wheels in the street become part of domestic life. A lodger occupies a small room upstairs. He works in a printing shop and pays for his bed and evening meal. When he enters the kitchen, snow clings to his shoulders. He apologizes for arriving late and places a folded newspaper on the table. The mother adds water to the pot and stirs. One and more bowl appears. Stretching a meal requires skill. More water, more bread, and careful portions allow hospitality without openly admitting that resources are thin. The lodger accepts his serving with gratitude and holds both hands around the bowl before eating. Conversation turns toward wages and the rising cost of fuel. The father says little, the lodger speaks more freely, describing men at the printing shop who want shorter hours. The mother listens while repairing a loose thread on the tablecloth. Her own labour has no fixed ending. It begins before others rise and continues after they sleep. Scholars disagree over how evenly improvements in food supply benefited working households in growing cities. Some emphasize expanding rail connections, larger markets, and more dependable movement of grain and produce. Others point out that availability means little when wages remain uncertain and prices rise sharply during poor harvests or severe weather. A city may contain plenty of food while a family still counts every slice. The bowls gradually... The father uses bread to collect the last broth from his dish. The children receive small cups of warm milk diluted with water. The mother eats the final portion standing near the stove, claiming she prefers it that way. Perhaps she does. Perhaps the chairs are full. Domestic sacrifice often disguises itself as personal preference. Supper ends without ceremony. Bowls are stacked. Crumbs are brushed into one hand and saved for birds or added to another dish. Water warms in a kettle for washing. The older child carries spoons to the basin. The younger child is given a cloth and manages to wipe the same patch of table many times. The stove ticks softly as heat moves through its tiles. Shadows grow longer around the walls. The newspaper lies unopened beside the bread basket. Work clothes begin to dry. Quiet settles over the room. Not complete silence, but the gentle calm of hunger satisfied and duties nearly finished. You remain near the warmth as the family clears the table, each person returning to a familiar task. Beyond the walls, the winter night presses against the house. Inside, a modest meal holds the cold at a distance and gathers everyone close enough to hear the soft scrape of spoons, the rustle of cloth, and the steady breathing of home. A tavern door opens, and a wave of warmth rolls into the street carrying the scents of yeast, roasted onions, wet wool, pipe smoke, and something frying in a shallow pan. You step inside. The room is crowded enough that the cold leaves your coat almost at once. Steam rises from damp shoulders, boots knock against chair legs, voices overlap beneath the low ceiling, forming a steady murmur broken by laughter, coughing, and the occasional sharp call for another drink. A long wooden table runs through the centre of the room. Men from nearby workshops sit shoulder to shoulder, their hands wrapped around heavy cups. A pair of carters occupies the bench near the stove. 2 shop assistants share a plate of bread and cheese. In a corner, a woman in a dark dress speaks quietly with an older relative while keeping one eye on the door. The tavern keeper moves between them with practiced balance. He carries several cups at once, collecting empty ones without asking. His apron is stained, his sleeves rolled, and his expression suggests that every customer has already requested something unreasonable. Records confirm that taverns serve as important social spaces in 19th century Prague. They offer food, drink, warmth, conversation, and news to people whose homes may be small, crowded, or distant from their workplaces. They also provide places for business agreements, political discussion, club meetings, and informal hiring. The tavern is not simply an escape from labour, it is an extension of public life. You find a place near the wall where the plaster is darkened from smoke. The bench is warm from the person who has just left. A server places a cup on the table and wipes away a ring of spilled liquid with one quick movement. The drink is pale and slightly cloudy, its foam settles slowly. Around you, conversations divide and join like streams. A carpenter complains that the price of oak has risen again. A printer insists that a new article will anger half the city. A railway worker describes a delayed train with such dramatic gestures that one might think the entire empire has fallen into a ditch. Next table. A young clerk tells a joke about an official who writes so many rules that he eventually requires permission to go home. The listeners laugh harder than the joke deserves, which may reveal more about officials than comedy. A group of labourers enters, stamping snow from their boots. The room shifts to make space. Coats are hung near the door. Hands reach toward the stove. One man removes his cap and squeezes melted snow from it onto the floor, earning an irritated look from the tavern keeper. The newcomers order bread, sausage, and hot cabbage. Their voices are loud at first, still carrying the energy of the street. As the food arrives, they grow quieter. Hunger has an excellent talent for ending debate. A musician sits near the far wall with a violin case at his feet. He waits until the room settles, then lifts the instrument to his shoulder. The first notes are thin but clear, rising above the conversations without silencing them. The melody is familiar to many in the room. A few customers hum along. One taps the table with 2 fingers, another closes his eyes. The music does not transform the tavern into a grand concert hall, but it changes the air. Shoulders relax, voices soften. Even the keeper pauses for half a breath. One scandalous aside concerns the hidden arrangements made in taverns between employers and workers. A promise of work may be offered over a drink, then conveniently forgotten the next morning. Wages may be discussed in friendly tones. While every person at the table quietly calculates advantage, hospitality can be sincere, but it can also carry a bill that arrives later. Near the stove, a group of men lowers their voices. They speak about working hours, factory discipline, and the possibility of organizing a petition. One watches the entrance while the others lean closer. Political authorities remain cautious about gatherings that might become demonstrations, and tavern conversations can attract unwanted attention. Yet not every whispered discussion is a conspiracy. Sometimes a complaint is only a complaint. Sometimes tired people want to describe an unfair foreman without overthrowing the world. Governments, however, are not famous for resting calmly on that distinction. A man in a respectable black coat sits alone near the window. His cup remains untouched. He appears to read a newspaper, but his eyes move toward the speaking group, more often than toward the print. Perhaps he is merely curious. Perhaps he recognizes someone. Perhaps he enjoys listening to other people's opinions while pretending to possess none of his own. The room grows warmer. Condensation covers the windows. Water runs down the glass in narrow lines. Outside shapes become blurred, and the tavern seems cut off from the city, floating in its own yellow light. A server brings a bowl of stew to an elderly customer. The man removes his gloves, finger by finger, places them beside the bowl, and leans over the steam. He does not begin eating immediately. He lets the heat touch his face. The gesture is so simple that few notice it. You do! Arguments remain open among historians about whether taverns mainly strengthened community or deepened social problems. Some emphasize mutual support, political discussion, musical culture, and the exchange of practical information. Others stress drunkenness, debt, domestic conflict, and the danger of wages disappearing across a counter. Both views can be true within the same room on the same night. A sudden burst of laughter rises near the center table. The railway worker has reached the most dramatic part of his story. He stands to imitate a conductor waving his arms during the delay. His performance sends one cup sliding toward the edge. A hand catches it. The room cheers. For a brief moment, the rescue of a drink receives more admiration than any political speech could hope to earn. The violinist begins a quicker tune. 2 customers clap in rhythm. A woman near the doorway smiles despite herself. The tavern keeper shakes his head but does not stop the music. As long as cups remain full and chairs remain upright, a little joy is good for business. Then the door opens again. Cold air enters in a narrow blade. Conversation dips as every face turns toward the newcomer. He is only a messenger, carrying a folded note for the keeper. The room returns to itself. Smoke gathers beneath the ceiling. Steam curls from bowls. Rumors cross tables. Coins strike wood. Someone begins another song in a voice that is confident, imperfect, and entirely sincere. You remain among these tired, talkative strangers while the winter presses against the fogged windows. Inside, work becomes story, anger becomes humour, and loneliness is held at bay by shared warmth. Crowded benches and the deep human need to be heard. The air changes as you approach the river. It becomes colder, cleaner, and faintly metallic. Smoke from the crowded streets thins behind you. The scent of damp stone rises from the embankment, mixed with wet timber, tar, and the distant trace of fish. You hear the water before you see it. The river moves beneath the darkness with a low, patient sound, pressing against stone supports and slipping around patches of floating ice. Mist hangs above the surface in pale ribbons. It gathers near the arches of the bridge and drifts slowly across the lamps, making each flame appear blurred and uncertain. You descend several worn steps toward the bank. The stones are slick beneath your boots. Frost has settled in the cracks, and a thin skin of ice covers the lowest step. You place one hand against the wall, feeling rough masonry through your glove. Across the river, scattered windows glow along the opposite shore. Their reflections tremble on the moving water, stretching into narrow lines of gold before breaking apart. The current carries every image downstream. Records confirm that the Vltava River is central to Prague's growth and survival. It supports trade, powers mills, carries timber, and links the city with communities beyond its walls. It also divides neighborhoods, threatens floods, and demands constant maintenance from those who build along its banks. A river gives generously, but never without conditions. Near the shore, a small cargo boat is tied to a wooden post. Its rope is stiff with frost. Snow rests along the gunwale, and a canvas sheet covers several stacked crates. The vessel rises and falls almost too gently to notice. A boatman stands on deck, checking the knots. He wears a thick coat secured at the neck with cord. His hands move confidently despite the darkness. He pulls one rope tight, tests another, and scrapes ice from a metal ring with the edge of a tool. The boat must remain secure through the night. A shifting current or loose knot could damage the hull, crush the cargo, or send the vessel drifting into a bridge support. Rest comes only after every line has been examined. You walk beneath an archway where sound becomes deeper. The river echoes against stone. Drops of water fall from the ceiling and strike the ground with slow, hollow taps. A rat darts between stacked planks and disappears before you can decide whether it is large or merely confident. Oddly enough, river workers sometimes judge changing weather by the behavior of animals along the banks. Restless birds, fish moving near the surface, or unusual activity among rats may be treated as warnings. These signs are not always reliable, but they offer something to observe when official forecasts remain limited and the sky refuses to explain itself. The bridge rises above you, its dark mass crossing the mist. Footsteps sound overhead. Wheels follow, muffled by snow from below. The traffic seems distant, as though another city moves across the stone while you stand in a colder world beneath it. A lantern approaches along the embankment. The man carrying it wears a short cape and sturdy boots. He may be a watchman, a dock worker, or someone returning from duties that do not respect ordinary sleeping hours. He lifts the lantern slightly as he passes you. His face appears for one moment, tired and pale. Then darkness. Exit again. Farther along the bank, timber has been stacked beneath a sloping shelter. Logs arrive by river from forested regions and are stored before sale or transport. Even in winter, men must inspect the piles, protect valuable wood from theft, and prevent loose pieces from rolling into the water. A labourer adjusts a covering over the stack. The canvas snaps in the wind. He pulls it down, secures it with rope, and stamps his feet to restore feeling. His breath rises around his face. There is no audience for the task, only the river and the faint glow of a lamp. You notice scratches cut into a nearby wall. Some mark earlier water levels, others may be meaningless lines left by tools, workers, or children. Flood memory is written into riverside buildings. Families living close to the bank know that calm water can rise quickly after heavy rain or melting snow. No agreement has been reached on how successfully Prague's 19th century river works protected poorer residents compared with wealthier districts. Some historians emphasize improvements in embankments, bridges, and flood control. Others argue that vulnerable communities still endured the greatest danger, especially where housing was crowded and escape routes were limited. The river itself offers no judgment. It continues moving beneath the ice. You climb toward the bridge. The stone parapet is cold beneath your palm. Statues stand at intervals along the crossing, their forms softened by snow and mist. From a distance, they resemble silent travelers who have stopped to watch the water. The bridge face is uneven. Frozen wheel tracks cut across the snow. Pedestrians keep near the sides, making way for a cart moving slowly through the centre. The horse pulls with care while the driver holds a lantern low enough to study the stones ahead. You stop midway. Below, the river widens into darkness. Small pieces of ice turn in the current. Some strike gently against one another with a faint clicking sound. Others disappear beneath the bridge and emerge on the opposite side. The noise is delicate, almost like glass beads shifting in a bowl. A bell rings from somewhere upstream. Another answers from the city. The sounds cross the water at different heights. One deep and one thin, mist carries them farther than expected. For several breaths, Prague seems built from nothing but bells, stone, and moving black water. Near the far end of the bridge, a fisherman stands beside a basket. He has chosen a sheltered place where the wind is weaker. His line hangs through a gap in the ice near the bank. Whether he expects success or merely prefers the river to his room is impossible to know. He lifts the line, checks the hook, and lowers it again. Patience is part of his equipment. The lamps on the bridge burn steadily. Though moisture gathers on their glass, their reflections below look brighter than the flames themselves. Each one stretches, breaks, reforms, and travels several feet before disappearing. You watch them for a long moment. The river carries trade, labour, danger, waste, memory, and beauty through the heart of the city. It does not pause for kings, workers, storms, or winter nights. It accepts every reflection without keeping one. You continue toward the opposite bank as mist closes behind you, hiding the steps, the moored boat, and the patient fisherman. Only the water remains audible, moving beneath the darkness with the calm persistence of time. A wooden staff strikes the pavement 3 times. The sound travels farther than expected through the narrow street, clear and deliberate beneath the sleeping windows. A watchman stands beneath a hooded lantern, his coat buttoned high at the throat, his boots planted firmly on the frozen stones. You remain near the sauna and study him. He is not dressed like a soldier, though his posture carries discipline. A short cape protects his shoulders, a leather belt holds a whistle, a ring of keys, and a small pouch. The staff in his hand serves as walking stick, warning signal, and modest defense against anyone who mistakes darkness for permission. He begins his round. You follow at a quiet distance while his lantern swings from one hand. Its light moves across doors, drains, shutters, and archways. Nothing receives more than a brief inspection, yet nothing is ignored. Records confirm that urban watchmen remain an important part of the nighttime security in 19th century Prague. Even as modern police institutions become more organized, their duties include watching for thieves, checking suspicious movement, reporting fires, helping lost travelers, and raising alarms when danger appears. The work demands patience more often than bravery. Most of the night offers no dramatic crime, only locked doors, cold fingers, distant noises, and the steady suspicion that the next shadow may require attention. It is a profession built on noticing what other people hope to sleep through. The watchman stops beside a shuttered shop. He lifts the lantern toward the lock, then presses one gloved hand against the door. It holds firm. He examines the lower window and notices a thin line where the shutter has not fully closed. Using the end of his staff, he nudges it into place. The action is small, almost domestic. The shopkeeper may never know that someone corrected the mistake. Night safety often depends upon such invisible acts. You continue into a lane where the wind carries the smell of ashes. The watchman pauses. He raises his head and breathes slowly, searching for smoke. Fire is one of the great fears of a crowded city. Buildings stand close together. Timber beams run behind plaster walls. Workshops store oil, cloth, wood shavings, and other materials eager to burn. A single neglected flame can travel from room to room before sleeping families understand the danger. He walks toward the smell and finds a heap of warm ash beside a courtyard gate. The ashes have been emptied too recently. A faint red glow remains beneath their grey surface. He kneels, pushes the pile apart with his staff, then gathers snow over it until the heat disappears. A council decree proves that cities attempt to regulate open flames, chimney maintenance, and the disposal of embers. Rules are announced, repeated, and occasionally obeyed. Human beings remain remarkably skilled at treating fire as harmless until it behaves otherwise. The watchman rises and brushes snow from one knee. A curious footnote concerns the old custom of calling out the hour during night rounds. In some European cities, watchmen announce both the time and a warning to guard lamps or fires. The cry reassures residents that someone is awake, though it may also wake the very people being reassured. He reaches a small crossing and strikes his staff once. Another answer comes from several streets away. The exchange is brief. Each man confirms his presence without leaving his route. The city is divided into areas of responsibility, connected by sound. A door opens above you. A man leans from an upper window and asks the hour. The watchman answers calmly. The man thanks him, closes the window, and leaves the watchman staring at the shutters with the expression of someone who has become a human clock in severe weather. You pass beneath an arch where a young traveller stands with a suitcase. He appears uncertain and slightly embarrassed. His coat is decent, but his shoes are poorly suited to snow. He has mistaken one inn for another and cannot read the sign clearly in the dark. The watchman listens, then points toward a street to the left. He gives careful directions, repeating the name of the inn and describing the symbol painted above its door. The traveller nods several times, gripping the suitcase with both hands. For a moment, the watchman becomes guide rather than guard. The traveller departs. You and the watchman continue. Near a warehouse, a dog begins barking behind a gate. The sound is sudden and furious. The watchman stops, lifts his lantern, and waits. Something moves beside the wall. A figure steps into the light. It is a boy carrying a bundle of kindling. He freezes when he sees the staff. The watchman asks where he obtained the wood. The boy explains that scraps were given to him by a carpenter. His answer comes too quickly, and his eyes remain fixed on the ground. The watchman examines the bundle. Several pieces appear freshly cut, while others are broken and rough. Scholars bicker over how strictly petty theft was punished in growing cities, particularly when hunger and fuel shortages shape the offence. Some records suggest firm penalties intended to protect property. Other evidence reveals warnings, informal mercy, and decisions influenced by age, reputation, or circumstance. The watchman studies the boy for a long moment. He removes one clean board from the bundle and points toward the warehouse. The boy returns it to a stack near the wall. Nothing more is said. The remaining scraps stay in his arms and hurries away, disappearing into the dark with enough fuel for a small fire and perhaps a lasting fear of wooden staffs. The watchman resumes his route. His judgment is not written into any official report. It belongs to the night, shaped by instinct, experience, and the knowledge that law without mercy can become another kind of cold. Farther along you hear raised voices. Two men stand near a closed tavern, arguing over a debt. One gestures wildly, the other keeps a hand inside his coat. The watchman approaches without rushing. He places the lantern between them. The light changes the quarrel immediately. Faces become visible. Movements become accountable. The man with his hand hidden slowly removes it, revealing only a folded glove. The watchman asks their names. Both men grow less enthusiastic. He tells them to return home by separate streets, one complains. The staff strikes the pavement once, and the complaint ends. The men depart in opposite directions, muttering with the dignity of people who intend to pretend this was their own decision. The hour grows later. Windows darken one by one. The watchman checks a stable door, guides a drunken clerk away from a frozen drain, and reports a broken lamp to another patrolman at a crossing. None of these acts will enter grand history, yet each one helps the city survive until morning. You walk beside him as his lantern passes over walls, gates, and silent steps. The cold deepens, but his pace remains steady. His attention moves constantly, listening for glass breaking, flames crackling, feet running, or a frightened voice calling from behind a door. The street appears empty, but he treats emptiness as something that must be watched. At the end of the lane, he turns and raises the lantern toward you. For one quiet second, you stand fully visible beneath its glow. He nods. Then he continues into the darkness, carrying order in one hand and a wooden staff in the other, while the sleeping city trusts him without ever seeing his face. A bell begins to move above the rooftops. At first, you hear only a deep vibration, as though the stone towers themselves have drawn breath. Then the full note rolls across the city, passing over chimneys, courtyards, frozen lanes, and the dark roofs of sleeping houses. You turn toward the sound. A church rises at the end of the street, its doorway set beneath carved stone darkened by age and weather. Snow gathers along the steps. Candlelight glows behind narrow windows, soft and steady against the blue cold. People are approaching from several directions. An elderly couple walks slowly, sharing one umbrella against the falling snow. A servant girl hurries with her shawl pulled tightly around her head. A well-dressed man arrives in a carriage, while a labourer comes on foot with sawdust still clinging to his sleeves. They enter through the same door. For a little while, rank and occupation pass beneath the same arch, though each person carries a very different life inside. You climb the steps and push against the heavy wooden door. Warm air meets you, scented with wax smoke, damp wool, old timber, and incense. The sound of the street disappears almost completely. Your boots touch worn stone, and the quiet seems larger than the building itself. Candles burn before side altars. Their flames tremble whenever the door opens. Shadows move across painted figures and carved columns. Gold leaf catches the light in narrow flashes, bright enough to appear almost liquid. Records confirm that religious life remains deeply woven into the daily rhythm of Prague in 1878. Churches mark hours, seasons, births, marriages, deaths, feast days, and public ceremonies. Even people who attend irregularly understand the calendar through bells and customary observances. Faith is not confined to private belief. It shapes architecture, music, education, charity, and the moral language used in homes and workplaces. It also provides ritual when ordinary speech fails, especially in times of illness, grief, uncertainty, and winter hardship. You move quietly along the side aisle. A woman kneels near the front, her hands clasped around a small cloth purse. Her lips move without sound. Perhaps she prays for a sick child, an absent husband, unpaid rent, or something so private that even history has no right to ask. Nearby, a young man sits with his cap in both hands. and looks toward the altar but seems too tired to focus. His shoulders slope forward. He may have come for devotion, shelter, or a few moments in a place where no one demands labor from him. The church offers both. A priest crosses the sanctuary, adjusting a book on a stand. His movements are careful and unhurried. An assistant trims a candle wick, then shields the flame with one hand until it steadies. Oddly enough, church wax sometimes finds a second life in households. Small remnants may be collected, melted, and reused for practical light. Sacred atmosphere and household thrift can share the same candle without troubling anyone too greatly. A group of women enters together. Their shoes squeak faintly on the wet stone. They remove gloves, lower their voices, and choose a pew near the side. One carries a basket covered with cloth, perhaps containing bread or clothing intended for a family in need. Religious charities provide important support in the city. Parish networks help distribute food, fuel, clothing, and small sums of money. Convents, brotherhoods, and private donors also contribute, though assistance depends heavily on local resources and personal judgment. A council decree proves that authorities often work alongside religious institutions when confronting poverty, illness, and public disorder. Yet such cooperation does not create a complete safety net. Help may come quickly to one household and too late to another. You sit near the rear. The wood of the pew is smooth in some places and splintered in others. Cold still clings to your coat, but the room slowly warms your hands. The bell stops. Silence settles for several breaths. Then a small organ begins to play. The first notes are low and gentle, filling the church without force. They travel upward into the vaulted ceiling and return softened. A few worshippers begin to sing. Their voices are not perfect. One person enters too early, another holds a note too long. The sound is human, uneven, and deeply calm. You listen as the melody moves through the space. The words are familiar to those around you, learned in childhood and repeated through decades. For some, they carry firm belief. For others, memory may matter more than certainty. A song heard beside a parent can remain sacred even when theology becomes complicated. Scholars remain divided over how religious devotion changes in rapidly modernizing cities. Some emphasize continuity, pointing to strong attendance, public ritual, and the influence of clergy. Others describe a gradual loosening of traditional authority among workers, students, and educated professionals. The evidence suggests not one simple decline or survival, but many forms of faith adjusting to new pressures. A young child turns around in the pew ahead of you. He studies your face with solemn interest. His mother gently guides him forward. A moment later, he turns again. Apparently, curiosity remains stronger than discipline, even under the eyes of carved saints. Near a side altar, small metal offerings hang beside painted images. They represent thanks, requests, and remembered suffering. A silver heart, a tiny arm, and miniature leg, each one stands for a prayer connected to the body. People leave such objects in hope or gratitude. The practice may appear unusual to a modern visitor, yet the meaning is simple. Pain becomes visible, fear takes shape. A private request is placed within a shared sacred world. The service continues. A reading is spoken in a measured voice. The congregation rises, then sits, coats rustle. A cane taps once against the floor. Someone coughs into a handkerchief. The priest speaks about endurance and does not promise that hardship will vanish. Instead, he speaks of patience, duty, mercy, and the responsibility to notice those who suffer nearby. Some listeners receive comfort, others may hear a challenge. A wealthy merchant in the front pew lowers his eyes. A washerwoman near the aisle holds her hands tightly together. the same words reach both, though not with the same consequence. The candles burn lower, wax gathers along their sides and hardens in pale streams. The organ returns with a softer melody. One by one, people begin to relax into the rhythm of familiar ritual. You notice the stone floor beneath your boots, cold despite the heated air. You notice the scent of wet wool drying. You notice how every face is briefly illuminated when someone lifts a candle. The church does not remove the winter waiting outside. It does not settle wages, cure illness, or fill every empty cupboard. Yet for this hour, it gathers strangers into a place where sorrow can be spoken quietly and hope can be practiced together. The final blessing is given. People rise and move slowly toward the door. Some remain kneeling. Others stop to speak with the priest or place coins into a box. When the door opens, cold air enters again. Snow swirls across the threshold. You step outside beneath the tower as the bell sounds once more. Its voice travels through the darkness, touching homes, taverns, workshops, and empty streets alike. Above you, the snow continues to fall around the cross and spire, while candlelight glows behind the stone, small but steady against the night. The church steps descend toward a street lined with tall houses whose fronts display carved balconies, painted plaster, and window framed by elegant stone. Snow rests neatly along every ledge, softening cracks and stains until the buildings appear almost flawless. You walk beneath these grand facades and notice the doors. Some are wide enough for carriages. Brass knockers shine in the lamplight. Stone coats of arms rise above arched entrances. Behind them lie reception rooms, tiled halls, private offices, and kitchens large enough to feed households of servants. Yet between two impressive buildings, a passage opens into a narrow courtyard. You enter carefully. The snow here is grey rather than white. Ash, spilled water, and countless footsteps have turned it into a frozen mixture that crunches beneath your boots. Laundry hangs stiff beneath a covered gallery. Broken crates lean against one wall. A pump stands near the centre, its handle wrapped in cloth to protect hands from the metal. Several families share this courtyard. Their rooms occupy upper floors reached by steep stairs. Windows are smaller here, and some have been patched with paper where glass has cracked. Smoke escapes from pipes fixed at awkward angles. The smell of boiled cabbage, damp wood, soap, and crowded bodies even settles heavily in the still air. Records confirm that Prague's rapid growth during the 19th century creates severe pressure on housing. Workers arrive seeking employment in factories, workshops, construction, transport, and domestic service. Rooms are divided, rented, and shared until buildings hold far more people than their designers expected. You climb the first staircase. The railing is cold and loose. Each landing opens onto several doors. From one room comes the sound of a sewing machine. From another, a child recites lessons in a tired voice. Somewhere above, a woman coughs with a deep, repeated strain. A widow lives behind the nearest door. Her room contains one bed, one chair, a small table, and a stove no larger than a cabinet. She repairs clothing for wealthier households, working by candlelight when daylight fades. Finished garments hang from nails along the wall, protected by sheets from... She receives payment by the piece. A difficult seam earns little more than an easy one. If her eyesight fails or her fingers stiffen, the work slows and the money falls. No employer pays for the hours lost to illness, cold, or grief. She warms a needle between her fingers and threads it carefully. Her daughter sits on the bed, sorting buttons into a wooden bowl. The child knows which are bone, metal, shell, and wood. She has learned the value of each long before learning anything as luxurious as boredom. A curious footnote concerns the strange objects used as household repairs. A broken button may be replaced with a polished coin, a carved fragment, or even a small piece of leather pierced with holes. Clothing among poor families becomes a living record of improvisation, each patch revealing another season survived. You leave the room and continue upward. On the next landing, 2 labourers rent beds from a family with 3 children. One works during the day and the other at night, allowing them to use the same mattress in separate shifts. The arrangement saves money but leaves little privacy and even less quiet. Apot sits outside the door because the room has no safe place for cooking. Meals may be prepared over a shared stove in the corridor or purchased cheaply from street sellers. Crowded housing turns ordinary tasks into negotiations. Who uses the stove first? Who carries water? Who pays when the chimney needs repair? Who receives blame when smoke fills the stairwell? The answers depend less on formal rules than on strength, age, reputation, and who is willing to argue longest. Yuba returned to the courtyard. A boy kneels beside a pile of coal fragments, picking through the black pieces for anything worth burning. His gloves have no fingertips. He works quickly, hiding each useful lump inside his coat. The coal has fallen from a delivery cart. Technically, it belongs to someone. Practically, the night is cold. A woman calls him from an upper window. He looks up, nods, and gathers the last fragments into a sack. Poverty in the city is not always visible as complete destitution. It often appears as constant calculation. 1 candle rather than 2. 1 meal stretched across more bowls. 1 coat shared between brothers. A doctor avoided because the fee might consume the week's food money. The difference between hardship and disaster may be a single missed wage. You cross into another street where a palace front glows beneath several lamps. A servant sweeps its steps, pushing clean snow toward the gutter. Through a ground floor window, you see a dining room prepared for guests. White cloth covers a long table. Glassware reflects candlelight. Silver dishes wait beneath polished covers. Near the rear wall, a woman stands with a basket. She has come to ask for kitchen scraps. The servant at the side door recognizes her. He disappears inside and returns with a wrapped parcel containing bread ends, vegetable peelings, and perhaps a little fat. The woman thanks him without meeting his eyes. One scandalous aside lies in the complicated world of private charity. Wealthy households may pride themselves on generosity, while paying servants poorly or dismissing workers without notice. A gift can ease suffering, but it can also preserve the giver's comfort with the system that created the need. Arguments split along moral and economic lines over the causes of urban poverty. Some officials blame drink, idleness, and poor household discipline. Reformers point instead to low wages, dangerous work, rising rents, illness, and the absence of reliable support. Modern scholars still debate how much personal choice matters when nearly every choice is constrained by necessity. You continue toward a cellar entrance. A family lives below street level where moisture stains the walls. The ceiling is low, their window looks directly onto passing boots. Every cart sends dust and slush against the glass. The father works irregularly unloading goods. The mother washes clothes for other families. Their oldest daughter cares for 2 younger children while also earning coins by carrying messages. No one in the household is idle, yet the room remains cold. The mother lifts a sheet from a steaming basin. Her hands are cracked and red. She twists the cloth, hangs it from a rope, and begins another piece. Laundry work fills the room with damp heat that soon settles into the walls. The youngest child sleeps beside the stove under 2 coats. You stand near the doorway, hearing the slow drip of water and the scrape of soap against fabric. Nothing in the room resembles laziness. Everything resembles endurance. Outside, the grand facades rise again. Their balconies catch the light. Their windows shine. Snow hides the gutters and smooths the paving stones, giving the street an appearance of calm order. But you now sense the crowded courtyards, rented beds, cellar rooms, and cold staircases concealed behind the beauty. The city wears elegance toward the street and hardship toward the yard. You move on while a woman above shakes a patched blanket from a window. Snow falls from it in a pale cloud, drifting briefly through the lamplight before settling over the dark courtyard below. A broad administrative building rises beyond the crowded houses, its windows arranged in strict rows and its entrance guarded by stone steps cleared carefully of snow. You approach beneath the pale glow of wall lamps. The facade offers little warmth. Columns support a heavy cornice. An imperial emblem hangs above the doorway, declaring authority before any official speaks. Clerks, messengers, policemen, petitioners, and minor officers pass through these doors each day, carrying papers that shape taxes, trade, schooling, travel, and public order. And Prague in 1878 stands within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a vast political structure joining many peoples under the Habsburg crown. Records confirm that the arrangement created in 1867 divides major authority between Austrian and Hungarian governments, while Prague remains governed within the Austrian half of the empire. The city therefore answers to institutions centered far beyond its own streets. You watch a clerk leave the building with a leather case tucked beneath his arm. He descends the icy steps carefully, guarding the papers more anxiously than his balance. A document lost in snow may delay salaries, permits, court decisions, or some poor merchant's request to repair a roof. Bureaucracy may appear dull from a distance, but it has remarkable power over ordinary comfort. Inside, corridors smell of ink, coal dust, sealing wax, and damp coats. Doors carry painted numbers. Benches line the walls for people waiting to present complaints. A clock ticks above a notice board, measuring time with impressive confidence while everyone beneath it waits. A shopkeeper sits holding a folded petition. He wants permission to alter the front of his building. Beside him, a widow seeks information about a pension connected to her late husband's service. A young man needs travel papers. Two craftsmen argue quietly over a licensing rule neither fully understands. The Empire reaches them through forms. Names must be entered correctly. Fees must be paid. Stamps must appear in the proper places. A missing signature can send a person back across the city, which is a very grand achievement for a small patch of blank paper. A curious footnote concerns the reverence surrounding official stamps. In many offices, a document without the correct seal is treated almost as though it does not exist. The words may be true, the witness is honest, and the need urgent. Yet the absent mark can defeat them all. Ink, it seems, sometimes outranks reality. You move along the corridor. Behind the one door, clerks copy entries into enormous ledgers. Their pens scratch in steady rhythm. Shelves rise behind them, packed with files tied in ribbon or string. Each bundle contains lives reduced to dates, addresses, payments, disputes, and decisions. One clerk warms his fingers over a small stove. Another sands a page to dry the ink. A supervisor walks between the desks and examines their work with the solemn expression of a man who suspects handwriting may lead directly to rebellion. Government officials in Prague serve a system that seeks stability across many regions, languages, religions, and local traditions. Uniform rules promise order. Yet local communities often resist being treated as identical pieces of one political machine. The tension is rarely simple. Some residents value imperial institutions because they provide courts, roads, schools, military protection, and access to a large economic realm. Others resent distant decision-making, cultural pressure, censorship, and the sense that Prague's needs are interpreted through priorities formed elsewhere. A civil servant stands at a window overlooking the street. He is Czech by family, educated in German, employed by the imperial administration, and loyal to a salary that feeds his children. His identity cannot be placed neatly into one drawer. He may admire the emperor and still want greater local authority. He may use one language at work and another at home. He may enforce a regulation he privately considers foolish. History often prefers people to choose one side clearly. Most people prefer to keep their employment. Outside the building, a military patrol crosses the street. Their boots strike the ground in measured unison. Dark coats fall to their knees. Rifles rest against their shoulders. The men come from different parts of the empire, and some may understand little of the speech heard around them. Military service draws young men away from villages and city neighborhoods into a shared institution ruled by command, discipline, and routine. It teaches loyalty to the crown, but it also creates frustration, homesickness, and contact between communities that might otherwise remain distant. One scandalous aside concerns the creative methods used to avoid military duty. Families may seek medical exemptions, favourable officials, substitute arrangements, or any legal weakness available. A young man suddenly develops a mysterious illness shortly before examination, then recovers with miraculous speed once the danger passes. Imperial medicine must occasionally compete with patriotic theatre. The patrol disappears round a corner. A carriage bearing an official insignia arrives at the administrative building. An attendant opens the door, and a senior officer steps down beneath a fur collar. Petitioners shift on the steps to make room. Authority enters quickly. Need waits patiently. Arguments split among historians over whether imperial rule mainly restrained Prague or helped create the conditions for its modernization. One interpretation emphasizes censorship, political limits, and unequal cultural influence. Another points to investment, legal reform, expanding education, railway growth, and administrative stability. The same empire can appear burdensome in one office and useful at the next railway station. You turn toward a nearby cafe where several newspapers lie on wooden stands. Readers gather around them, discussing speeches, regulations, elections, and decisions made in Vienna. News travels quickly by rail and telegraph, shrinking distance without removing resentment. A middle-aged lawyer reads aloud from a political report. A student interrupts him. A merchant objects to the interruption. Within moments, the table is divided into 3 opinions and 4 speeches. No one lowers his voice. Public political life remains restricted compared with a modern democracy. Yet representative institutions, municipal bodies, associations, newspapers, and legal debates give citizens ways to influence affairs. Participation is uneven and voting rights are limited, especially by property and social position. The state listens, but not equally. Women shape politics through family networks, charitable organizations, education, cultural activity, and private influence. Even though formal political rights remain severely restricted, workers gather in associations, professionals form clubs, landowners defend privilege, national activists organize lectures and campaigns. The city speaks through many channels because no single channel is fully open. Night deepens around the official building. A caretaker locks a side entrance. Clerks leave in pairs, carrying cases and unfinished worries. A messenger hurries away with a sealed packet pressed beneath his coat. Lamps remain lit in several upper windows where someone continues copying, reviewing, approving, or refusing. You stand beneath the imperial emblem as snow gathers along its carved edges. It appears permanent in stone, yet beneath it, loyalties shift quietly. Citizens learn new political language, associations grow, newspapers sharpen their arguments, officials measure public feeling with increasing concern. The empire seems immense, orderly, and secure. Still, every petition, every public meeting, every conversation in a cafe reveals a city asking how much of its future should be decided by distant hands. You continue through the administrative quarter while the windows glow above you, and the machinery of imperial rule turns steadily through the winter night, powered by ink, obedience, compromise, and the growing pressure of voices that refuse to remain quiet. A doorway opens onto a lecture room where rows of wooden chairs face a narrow platform. You enter with a small crowd of teachers, students, clerks, shopkeepers, and women carrying notebooks beneath their winter cloaks. Snow melts from boots and gathers in dark patches on the floor. The room smells of damp wool, lamp oil, chalk, and fresh paper. Conversation fills the space before the speaker arrives. Some voices are low and cautious. Others carry the bright energy of people who believe language itself can reshape the future. Books pass from hand to hand. Newspapers are folded beneath arms. A young teacher checks a list of names near the entrance, then closes the door against the cold. The gathering concerns Czech literature, education, and public life. Records confirm that the 19th century brings a powerful revival of Czech language and culture. Writers, scholars, teachers, journalists, musicians, and civic organizers work to strengthen a language that has long competed with German in administration, higher education, commerce, and elite society. The movement does not begin in one room or belong to one class. It grows through schools, theatres, libraries, singing societies, newspapers, historical studies, public festivals, and countless family decisions about which language children will learn, read, and use. You choose a seat near the back. A teacher steps onto the platform and places several books on a small table. His coat is worn at the elbows. His voice begins quietly, then gains confidence as he speaks about education in the language of the home. For many listeners, this question is deeply personal. A child may hear Czech from parents and neighbours, then encounter German in official offices, advanced schools, prestigious professions, or certain shops. Language becomes more than a tool. It can signal class, opportunity, loyalty, and ambition. A father may want his son educated in German because it opens doors. The same father may fear that success will pull the son away from family culture. A mother may insist that children read Czech stories at home even when school books arrive in another language. Such decisions unfold around supper tables, not only in political meetings. The speaker lifts a grammar book and praises the patient work of scholars who standardize spelling and vocabulary. Their labour may sound harmless, yet choosing words can become an act of cultural resistance. A language needs dictionaries, textbooks, newspapers, scientific terms, legal phrases, and literature capable of expressing both ordinary life and great ideas. Revival requires more than emotion. It requires printers, editors, teachers, money, and a heroic tolerance for arguments about commas. A curious footnote concerns the intense disputes that can arise over proper vocabulary. One scholar may condemn a borrowed term while another defends it as practical. Readers may complain that new words sound artificial. Teachers may disagree over pronunciation. The struggle to make a language feel natural can involve an impressive amount of unnatural irritation. A woman in the second row raises her head. She asks about schools for girls. The room shifts slightly. Her question exposes the limits within a movement that speaks broadly of national progress, while often reserving formal authority for men. Women teach children, organize reading circles, support charities, preserve songs, raise funds, and influence household language. Yet their public contributions may receive less recognition. The lecturer answers respectfully, though cautiously. Several women exchange knowing glances. Progress, you notice, sometimes walks with one foot while asking the other to remain seated. Outside the lecture room, printers work late. You enter a narrow shop where metal type fills shallow trays. Workers arrange tiny letters into lines, locking them into frames before ink touches paper. The room is warm from machinery and crowded with the smell of oil, ink, hot metal, and sweat. A press moves with a heavy rhythmic sound. Paper enters blank and emerges carrying editorials, poems, announcements, serialized stories, and reports from public meetings. Each printed sheet can travel farther than any speaker's voice. A council notice proves that authorities understand the influence of print and monitor newspapers closely. Editors must balance conviction against legal danger. A phrase judged too provocative may invite confiscation, fines, or official attention. The printer studies a page before approving it. One line praises cultural rights, another criticizes administrative inequality. The wording is forceful enough to stir readers, but careful enough, perhaps, to survive examination. This is politics conducted with ink and nerves. A young typesetter notices an error and removes one tiny metal letter. He replaces it with another, then checks the line again. A single wrong character could change a name, weaken an argument, or create a joke where none was intended. He smiles at the corrected sentence. The page returns to the press. You move toward a theatre where posters announce a performance in Czech. Carriages arrive, but many audience members come on foot. Families enter in their finest winter clothing. Students gather near the doors. Merchants greet teachers. Music drifts from within. Theatre offers more than entertainment. Actors speak the language publicly before a large audience. Historical dramas give the past emotional shape. Comedies make shared habits recognizable. Songs carry phrases into memory more easily than speeches. Inside, the audience reacts warmly to familiar expression. A joke about official paperwork earns loud laughter. A patriotic line receives applause that lasts slightly longer than politeness requires. One scandalous aside concerns the quiet rivalry between cultural institutions. Supporters argue over which theatre, newspaper, society, or writer best serves the national cause. Personal ambition can wear patriotic clothing very comfortably. Two men may defend the same language while refusing to sit at the same table. Scholars remain divided over how unified the Czech national movement truly is in 1878. Some emphasize growing solidarity across social groups. Others point to sharp differences between workers, middle-class professionals, rural communities, religious conservatives, and political liberals, or not everyone imagines the same. Some seek cultural equality within the empire. Others demand greater political autonomy. Some focus on language. Others care more about wages, land, education, or local power. Identity grows, but it does not erase every other concern. You leave the theatre and enter a reading room where newspapers lie beneath green-shaded lamps. A seamstress studies a short article slowly, moving one finger beneath each line. A clerk reads a political essay with a frown. Two students whisper about a poet whose newest work has become fashionable. At another table, an older man reads aloud to listeners who cannot read easily themselves. The words become shared property as soon as they enter the room. You hear history, humour, criticism, and hope carried in the same language. Each sentence confirms that public life need not belong only to officials or social elites. Beyond the windows, so settles on signs written in more than one language. The city remains mixed, layered, and contested. Neighbours may speak differently without being enemies. Families may move between languages with ease. A shopkeeper may greet one customer in Czech and another in German, then count money in the universal language of careful attention. Yet public confidence is changing. Teachers establish schools, writers enlarge literature, musicians fill halls, journalists sharpen debate. Citizens discover that culture can become organisation, and organisation can become political strength. You continue through the winter streets as voices rise from lecture rooms, printing sales, theatres, and homes. They do not yet speak with one purpose, but they no longer accept silence as their natural condition. Across Prague, language becomes memory made public, identity given sound, and a quiet declaration that the city belongs not only to those who govern it, but also to those who name its streets, teach its children, tell its stories, and dream within its walls. A faint hammering reaches you through a closed courtyard gate. The rhythm is measured rather than loud. 3 strikes, a pause, then 2 more. You press your hand against the rough wood and feel a small vibration travel through the boards. A side door stands partly open. You enter a courtyard where several workshops remain lit. Their windows glow beneath layers of frost, and thin smoke rises from short chimneys. Snow has been trampled into dark paths between doors. Barrels, timber, iron scraps, and broken crates rest against the walls. The hour is late, yet work continues. You approach the nearest window and see a blacksmith bending over a metal fitting held against an anvil. His forge burns red behind him. Sparks rise whenever the hammer falls. Bright points that vanish before reaching the floor. His apprentice works the bellows. The boy pulls the handles with both arms, feeding air into the coals. Heat presses against his face, while the rest of the room remains cold enough for frost to cling near the door. His shirt is damp at the shoulders. His eyes follow every movement of the master. Records confirm that small workshops remain vital to Prague's economy in 1878. Craftsmen produce and repair shoes, tools, locks, furniture, clothing, wagons, household metalwork, printed goods, and countless objects required by a growing city. Factories are expanding, but they do not replace every skilled trade. A broken hinge still needs a hand capable of shaping iron. A damaged chair still needs someone who understands grain and joint. A torn boot still needs leather, thread, and patience. The blacksmith lifts the fitting with tongs and lowers it into water. Steam bursts upward with a fierce hiss. The apprentice turns his face away, though not quickly enough to avoid the warm cloud. The master inspects the cooled piece, runs a thumb along its edge, and places it beside several others. The fittings belong to a carriage that must leave early in the morning. Urgency belongs to the customer. Sleeplessness belongs to the craftsman. You cross toward a carpenter's shop. Inside, the air smells of pine resin, glue, wax, and fresh shavings. A man planes the edge of a cabinet door, while his daughter holds a lamp closer. Each stroke sends a thin curl of wood sliding to the floor. The cabinet is nearly finished. Its panels carry simple carved leaves. Brass handles wait on a cloth beside the bench. The customer has requested delivery before a family celebration, which means the final polishing must continue long past the comfortable hour. The daughter rubs wax into one panel with a piece of linen. Her hands move in circles, gradually deepening the colour of the wood. She may not be formally recognised as a trained craft worker, yet her labour is essential. Wives, daughters, sons, apprentices, and hired assistants often contribute to family businesses in ways that official records describe poorly or ignore. A council register proves that craft trades are regulated through licenses, associations, examinations, and local rules. Training can protect standards and preserve skill, but it can also limit entry and defend established interests. The carpenter examines the hinge placement. He marks a point with a charcoal, then he measures again. Good work demands caution because a mistake made at midnight remains a mistake in daylight. A curious footnote concerns the use of wood shavings as bedding, packing material, kindling, and even stuffing for simple cushions. The curled scraps covering the floor may appear useless. Yet little from a workshop is discarded without thought. Waste is merely material waiting for a less proud purpose. You move into a shoemaker's room. The ceiling is low, and the windows are almost hidden behind hanging leather. Several finished boots stand on a shelf. Others wait in pieces, their soles, uppers, and heels arranged in careful groups. The shoemaker sits beneath an oil lamp with a wooden form resting between his knees. He pulls waxed thread through thick leather, tightening each stitch with a short, firm movement. His fingertips are marked by small cuts. A cup of cold tea stands beside him, forgotten. Across the table, his wife records payments in a notebook. One customer has paid in full, another owes half. A third has promised payment after receiving wages. Credit keeps business moving, but it also transfers risk from customer to craftsman. Leather must be purchased even when coins arrive late. Rent must be paid even when promises are generous. The shoemaker studies a boot meant for a factory supervisor. The leather is strong, the sole reinforced, and the heel slightly raised. Near it lies a child's shoe repaired twice already. One object brings profit, the other brings little. But the family who owns it cannot afford replacement. He chooses the child's shoe first. Perhaps the repair is simple. Perhaps he knows the family. Perhaps Mercy has entered the order book without being named. The debate among historians remains unsettled over whether industrial growth weakens independent craftsmen as rapidly as older accounts suggest. Some scholars emphasize competition from factories, cheaper standardized goods, and the decline of traditional control. Others point to adaptation, specialization, repair work, and the continuing demand for custom products. The workshop offers evidence for both views. A sewing machine stands beside hand tools. Factory-made thread lies near leather cut by hand. Old skill and new machinery share the same table, not always peacefully, but often practically. You hear metal scraping from another room. A locksmith is filing the teeth of a key. Tiny silver fragments fall onto dark cloth. Several locks hang from hooks behind him, each with a different mechanism. He holds the key toward the lamp and studies its shape. The work requires precision measured in fractions too small for tired eyes. He rubs them, blinks several times, and returns to the file. A customer waits near the door. She has lost the key to a storage room containing winter fuel. The locksmith asks careful questions about the lock and the property. A skilled man who can open doors must also protect his reputation from suspicion. Trust is part of the trade. He finishes the key and wraps it in paper. The woman pays, thanks him, and leaves quickly. A clock somewhere at the courtyard strikes the quarter hour. No one stops. The blacksmith reheats another fitting. The carpenter adjusts a hinge. The shoemaker knots his thread. The locksmith begins repairing a damaged latch. Each workshop creates its own island of sound. Hammer against iron, plane across wood, needle through leather, file against metal. Together they form a quiet mechanical music beneath the winter sky. You stand in the center of the courtyard while snow falls through the smoke. These people do not work late because the night inspires them. Deadlines, debts, damaged goods, and customer demands keep the lamps burning. Skill may carry pride, but pride does not pay for fuel unless someone buys the finished object. One by one, the workers complete their final tasks. A tool is wiped clean, A ledger closes. A forge is covered. Shavings are swept away from the stove. Finished goods are placed safely beyond damp and frost. The carpenter stretches his back and winces. The shoemaker flexes his fingers. The apprentice yawns so widely that the blacksmith finally tells him to stop pretending he's awake. The workshop lamps begin to dim. Doors close across the courtyard, each lock turning with a soft metallic click. The hammering ends. The scraping fades. Smoke thins above the roofs. You leave through the wooden gate while the last craftsman remains at his bench, polishing a narrow strip of brass until it catches the lamplight. In that small reflection rests the patience of hands, the cost of every useful object, and the quiet dignity of work completed while most of the city sleeps. A narrow lane slips away from the main street, almost hidden between a shuttered pharmacy and a house with a cracked stone arch. You turn into it. The snow lies deeper here, untouched except for a single line of footprints. They lead toward a courtyard gate painted black, then disappear beneath its lower edge. No lamp burns above the entrance. Only a thin thread of light escapes through a gap in the wood. The lane feels secretive, though perhaps every quiet place feels guilty after midnight. You move closer and hear voices inside. They are careful voices, softened by walls and caution. A chair shifts, paper rustles, someone coughs once, then silence returns. Behind the gate, several people have gathered in an upstairs room above a closed bookshop. Their coats hang near the stove. Melted snow darkens the floorboards. A kettle rests on a low table beside cups that no one remembers to refill. The meeting is private. A teacher, a printer, a law student, a clerk, and 2 merchants sit around the table. One woman stands near the window, watching the courtyard through a narrow opening in the curtain. Records confirm that political and cultural associations grow increasingly important in Prague during the late 19th century. Some operate openly through lectures, reading societies, charitable groups, and professional clubs. Others become cautious when their discussions touch sensitive questions of national rights, labour conditions, censorship, or imperial authority. The people in this room are not planning violence. They are planning words. A petition lies at the centre of the table. It asks for greater support for Czech language instruction in a local school. The request is legal, polite, and carefully phrased. Even so, every sentence has been argued over. One man wants stronger language. Another warns that officials may reject the petition if it sounds confrontational. The teacher insists that parents will sign only if the purpose is clear. The clerk points out that clarity is often the first victim of official politeness. You listen as they revise one paragraph for the 4th time. The printer crosses out a phrase. The student restores half of it. The woman near the window suggests a simpler sentence, which everyone accepts after several minutes of pretending they reach the same idea independently. A curious footnote concerns the hiding places used for sensitive papers. Documents may be slipped beneath floorboards, sewn into coat linings, tucked behind religious pictures, or concealed inside books that appear too dull to attract attention. A thick volume of tax regulations can become an excellent guardian of secrets because few people open it willingly. The petition is copied by hand. Each page must be clear enough for signatures and plain enough to avoid suspicion. Ink dries slowly in the cold room. Sand is scattered over the writing, then brushed away. One merchant removes his spectacles and rubs the bridge of his nose. He worries that customers may avoid his shop if his involvement becomes known. The teacher worries that school officials may punish him. The student claims he fears nothing, which convinces no one, including himself. Courage in such rooms is rarely fearless. It is fear given a chair and asked to remain quiet while the work continues. Outside, snow gathers against the air. A patrol passes at the end of the lane. Boots strike the stones in steady rhythm. Conversation stops. The woman lowers the curtain. Everyone remains still until the sound fades. Then the printer exhales? The student makes a joke about the quality of imperial footwear. No one laughs loudly. Elsewhere in the city, another secret unfolds with far less political purpose. A young woman leaves her family home carrying a covered basket. She tells the household servant that she is taking medicine to an aunt. The basket does contain medicine, which gives the story a useful foundation. She crosses 2 streets and enters a passage beside a bakery. A young man waits beneath a balcony. Eyes poorly hidden, snow has gathered on his shoulders, and his nervous pacing has carved a small trench near the wall. When she appears, he straightens so quickly that his hat nearly falls. Their families do not approve of the match. His income is uncertain. Her father considers him unsuitable. Her mother says little but notices everything. The pair have exchanged letters through a cousin who enjoys the arrangement more than either of them suspects. They stand several steps apart. Even privacy has rules. He asks whether she received his last note. She says she did. He asks whether she has answered. She says the answer is in the basket, beneath the medicine. This is not the most efficient postal system in Europe, but it possesses emotional advantages. One scandalous aside concerns the secret assistance sometimes provided by servants. A maid may carry letters, delay a parent at the doorway, or announce a visitor under a harmless name. She may do this from affection, amusement, loyalty, or the expectation of a small gift. Romantic destiny often depends upon someone willing to lie convincingly near the kitchen stairs. The young woman gives the basket to the man. Their gloved hands touch briefly. The contact lasts less than a second, yet both become silent. The debate remains open among social historians over how much freedom young people truly possess in choosing marriage partners during this period. Some evidence suggests growing importance of affection and personal preference, especially in cities. Other accounts show that family approval, religion, income, reputation, and inheritance still shape nearly every serious match. Love may speak privately. Marriage must answer publicly. The young man promises to find steadier employment. She tells him not to promise what he cannot control, and smiles, surprised by her firmness. She smiles back, then remembers that secrecy should not look cheerful. A distant door closes. They separate at once. She returns toward the main street without the basket. He waits several minutes before leaving in the opposite direction, carrying medicine, a letter, and the expression of a man who has been entrusted with all 3 but understands only one. You continue through the hidden passages of the old town. A rear staircase leads to a room where musicians rehearse after official hours because a landlord objects to noise. In a cellar, workers discuss forming a mutual aid fund for illness and funerals. Behind a shop counter, a bookseller keeps several prohibited pamphlets beneath harmless religious calendars. Not every secret challenges the empire. Some protect dignity. A family hides the fact that rent is overdue. A clerk conceals a torn cuff beneath his desk. A widow tells neighbors she has eaten. A servant keeps coins beneath a loose brick, saving for a future no employer knows about. Secrecy belongs to the powerful and the vulnerable alike, though it serves them differently. For officials, secrecy may protect influence. For ordinary people, it may protect survival. Revival. You pass a dark doorway where a man places a wrapped parcel beneath a bench. Another figure collects it moments later. Perhaps it contains political papers, perhaps unpaid goods, perhaps a birthday gift hidden from curious children. The city refuses to explain every shadow. Snow helps conceal the movement. It muffles steps and hides faces beneath collars, yet it also records every journey. Footprints reveal where someone paused, turned, returned, or waited. Secrets are safer in darkness than in fresh snow. Near the black courtyard gate, the private meeting ends. The petition has been approved. Each person leaves separately. The teacher goes first, followed later by the clerk. The woman waits until the lane is empty, then locks the door behind her. Their footprints spread in different directions. By morning, more snow may cover them completely. The paper they prepared will remain. You stand in the silent lane as the final light disappears from the upstairs window. Around you, Prague keeps thousands of private truths beneath roofs, behind shutters, inside coat pockets, and under careful tongues. The night seems calm, yet beneath that calm, affection resists authority. Workers imagine solidarity, families protect pride, and quiet citizens discover that even a whispered intention can begin to change a life. Midnight arrives without ceremony. No trumpet announces it. A crowd looks upward. The hour simply gathers over Prague until the city seems to hold one long breath beneath the snow. You stand where several streets meet, and for the first time the silence feels greater than the buildings. Shutters are closed, tavern doors are barred, workshop fires have settled into red embers, even after the horses waiting beneath stable roofs have stopped stamping. Their harness bells are still, their breath rises in slow white clouds. The cold has deepened. It reaches through seams, buttons, and layers of wool with patient determination. The iron latch beside you feels almost alive with frost. Snow crystals cling to the stone wall and catch the weak light from a distant lamp. You hear your own breathing. Each exhalation appears, floats, and disappears. The city has not truly stopped. Somewhere, a baker prepares dough for morning. Somewhere, a nurse sits beside a feverish child. Somewhere, a printer checks one final page. Yet these unseen movements only make the surrounding stillness feel more complete. A clock begins striking 12. The first note rolls across the roofs, then the second. Each sound travels outward, touches a tower, returns from a courtyard, and fades into the frozen air. By the final strike, several distant clocks have joined in, slightly early or late, creating a solemn confusion of time. Records confirm that public clocks and church bells regulate urban life long before private timepieces become common in every household. They call people to worship, mark working hours, announce danger, and help strangers move through the same day. At midnight, however, their authority feels almost ceremonial. The bells tell you that one day has ended, but the snow continues falling exactly as it did a moment earlier. You walk into a lane where no fresh footprints remain. The walls rise close and on both sides. Window glass is black. A wooden sign creaks above you, moved by a wind too faint to feel at street level. Your boots press into deep powder. The sound is soft, almost intimate. A cat appears beneath a cart. It studies you with bright eyes, then steps delicately across the snow. Each paw sinks only slightly as the animal pauses near a doorway, lifts one foot, and looks offended by the entire season. Oddly enough, some residents believe that cats can sense death, illness, or approaching storms. A cat refusing to enter a room may be treated as a warning. The poor creature may simply dislike a draft, but superstition rarely accepts such ordinary explanations. The cat slips through a gap in a gate. You continue alone. At the corner, a night watchman stands beside a brazier. The coals glow orange beneath a pierced metal cover. He holds his hands over the heat and turns them slowly. His face is lined with fatigue. He looks toward you, recognizes no threat, and returns his attention to the coals. At this hour, conversation would require energy that neither of you wishes to spend. A faint scraping noise comes from a roof. Snow slides over the tiles in a slow sheet, gathers at the edge, and falls into the street with a soft, heavy collapse. You step back instinctively. The watchman does not move. He has heard the warning sound before and knows where the snow will land. Experience has given him the confidence to remain warm while you perform a small dance of historical alarm. The mound settles across the road. Nothing else follows. You pass beneath balconies where icicles hang in uneven rows. Some are as long as walking sticks. They shine faintly whenever the clouds thin enough to reveal the moon. Winter creates beauty with very poor concern for public safety. A loose shutter knocks once against a wall. Then again, the sound seems loud enough to wake the entire quarter, yet no lamp appears. People sleep deeply beneath blankets, feather beds, coats, and anything else that can hold warmth. In poorer rooms, several bodies share one small space. In wealthier homes, curtains surround beds to trap heat. Across social divisions, midnight reduces everyone to the same basic hope that the fire lasts until dawn. Arguments remain unsettled among historians over how much nighttime silence in 19th century cities reflects genuine rest. Some emphasize the sharp reduction in traffic, trade, and public activity. Others note the hidden labor of servants, bakers, watchmen, medical workers, transport crews, and the poor, whose duties often continue when respectable households sleep. Can be misleading. It may mean rest. It may mean exhaustion. It may mean work occurring behind walls too thick for you to hear. You turn into a small square where a stone fountain stands frozen. Ice fills the basin and climbs around the carved spout. Snow has gathered on the rim, untouched except for the marks of birds. A bench nearby is nearly buried. The open space feels abandoned. You cross slowly, aware of every shift in the air. The scent of coal smoke has faded. What remains is cold stone, snow, and the faint, clean smell of frost. A figure appears beneath an arch. For a moment, the shape does not move. Then, a woman steps into the lamp glow carrying a covered basket. She walks with deliberate care, avoiding the deepest snow. Her cloak is plain, her face tired. She may be a midwife. Midwives travel at all hours, called to houses where birth ignores clocks, weather, and municipal convenience. Her basket likely contains cloth, simple instruments, herbs, and supplies prepared for uncertainty. She passes without speaking. The basket remains steady in her arm. Her steps disappear into another lane. You listen until the sound fades. A child may be entering the world somewhere nearby while the city appears entirely asleep. You walk toward a churchyard wall. The gate is locked. Snow covers the stones beyond it, smoothing every mound and path into one pale surface. Bare branches rise above the wall, black against the sky. The place is not frightening. It feels still, solemn, and deeply quiet. Midnight has a way of making memory feel close. Generations have crossed these streets, carried water, argued over prices, waited for letters, repaired shoes, guarded doors, and watched snowfall from the same darkness. Their lives are gone, yet the city holds their patterns. A worn step remembers feet, a polished railing remembers hands, a narrow room remembers voices even after the voices disappear. You reach a higher street where the roofs open toward the sky. Clouds drift apart. Moonlight touches the snow and changes the city from amber to silver. Lamps still burn, but they no longer rule the scene. Towers rise, pale and distant. Chimneys cast long shadows. Every roof seems connected by one unbroken white covering. The deepest hour is not empty. It is full of things at rest. Carts wait beneath sheds. Ledgers remain closed on desks. Bread dew rises beneath cloth. Letters lie hidden in drawers. Tools cool beside benches. Dreams move through crowded rooms. You stand beneath the moon while the cold settles around you with complete confidence. No crowd remains. No wheel turns. No public voice demands attention. Prague seems ancient, private, and almost weightless beneath the snow. Then, from very far away, a rooster calls too early. Another answers. The sound is weak and slightly foolish, but it breaks the stillness. You smile beneath your scarf. Even the deepest frozen hour cannot hold forever. A faint grey light gathers behind the eastern roofs. It does not arrive as sunrise at first. The darkness simply becomes thinner, allowing chimneys, towers, and window frames to separate slowly from the night. Snow-covered streets emerge in shades of silver, and the last lanterns seem less powerful with every passing minute. You walk toward the old town as the city begins to wake. A bakery door opens, releasing heat and the rich scent of fresh bread. Two workers carry wicker baskets toward a waiting cart. Their sleeves are dusted with flour, and their tired faces suggest that morning belongs to those who have already worked for hours. The baker tests each loaf with a practiced hand. Crusts crack softly as they cool. Steam rises when one loaf is split for inspection. The smell drifts along the street, reaching windows where sleeping residents have not yet realized that hunger is about to wake them. Records confirm that bakers often begin work during the night so bread can be ready at dawn. Their schedules are shaped by fermentation, oven heat, customer demand, and strict local expectations concerning weight and quality. Morning bread appears simple on the wall. Its preparation belongs to darkness. A delivery boy climbs onto the cart and covers the baskets with cloth. The horse turns its head toward him, hopeful that one of the loaves may have been prepared for animals with excellent patience. None has. The cart moves away with a gentle rattle. Farther along, shutters begin to open. A shopkeeper pushes one panel outward and receives a small shower of snow from the ledge above. He closes his eyes, wipes his face, and studies the roof with quiet betrayal. His wife laughs from inside and pretends not to hear. The first customers will arrive soon. Floors must be swept, lamps trimmed, goods arranged, and yesterday's accounts reconsidered in the clearer judgment of morning. A milk seller enters the street carrying metal containers suspended from a wooden yoke. Each step produces a soft knock as the vessels touch. She knows which households expect delivery and which families may ask for another day of credit. Her work joins farms beyond the city with breakfast tables inside it. Transport, storage, and timing matter greatly because milk spoils quickly, even in winter. The cold helps preserve it, but freezing can damage its texture. The seller keeps the containers close to her body, protecting them from the sharpest air. A curious footnote concerns customers who test milk by dropping it onto a polished surface or examining how it clings to a needle. Such methods claim to reveal whether water has been added. Their accuracy varies, but suspicion remains wonderfully consistent. You pass a public pump where several servants and householders have gathered. The handle groans as water rises. One woman fills 2 buckets while another waits with a covered jug. Their conversation begins softly, then grows livelier as news moves through the group. A child has been born near the river. A merchant has dismissed a clerk. A roof has leaked into an upper bedroom. A young couple may be planning an engagement, though no one agrees on whether the families approve. Morning information travels faster than morning carts. The women lift their containers and depart them towards the separate streets, carrying water in their hands and stories in their minds. A municipal worker arrives with a shovel. He clears packed snow from a crossing and spreads gritty material over the exposed ice. Another worker follows with a broom. Their task is repetitive, physical, and necessary. Without them, horses slip, pedestrians fall, and carts become trapped. A council record proves that city authorities devote increasing attention to street maintenance, sanitation, drainage, and winter access as Prague grows. Yet services remain uneven, and poorer lanes may wait longer for assistance than important commercial routes. The worker pauses to stretch his back. A carriage passes through the cleared section without slowing. He watches it go, then returns to the shovel. Public improvement often becomes invisible the moment it succeeds. You enter a street where factory workers are gathering. Men and women walk in small groups, carrying wrapped food, tools, or personal bundles. Some speak quietly, others conserve their breath. Their destination lies beyond the oldest lanes, where chimneys and larger industrial buildings mark a changing city. A whistle sounds in the distance. The note is harsh and mechanical, unlike the rounded voice of church bells. It calls workers by schedule rather than devotion. It measures time in shifts, wages, and penalties for lateness. The city now answers to both sounds. A young woman adjusts the scarf around her head and quickens her pace. Beside her, an older worker gives advice about an icy corner near the factory gate. They disappear into the growing flow of pedestrians. Scholars still disagree about whether industrial discipline creates a sharper break between home and work than older craft life allowed. Some describe the factory clock as a major transformation in daily experience. Others note that servants, labourers, traders, and craftsmen have long lived under demanding schedules shaped by customers, daylight, seasons, and household authority. The whistle feels new. The pressure to hurry does not. You reach the old town square as daylight strengthens. Market workers uncover stalls, porters unload baskets. A butcher scrubs a wooden surface with hot water. A flower seller arranges dried winter greenery beside bundles of bare branches. The square that seemed enormous in darkness now fills with movement. Pigeons descend in noisy groups. Students hurry toward lessons. Officials cross toward their offices. A priest speaks with an elderly man near the church steps. Carriages weave between handcarts while drivers call warnings into the cold air. The lantern flames are extinguished one by one. A lamplighter raises his pole to the first glass housing. The flame shrinks, trembles, and disappears. Smoke curls inside the pane. He walks to the next lamp. Each small darkness marks the arrival of day. The extinguished lamps look plain and fragile without their glow. Soot stains the glass. Metal frames show rust. Their evening beauty depends upon labour, fuel, cleaning, and the quiet attention of workers rarely noticed. One scandalous aside concerns complaints about the cost of public lighting. Citizens may demand brighter streets while protesting the taxes required to maintain them. They expect safety and elegance and economy to arrive together, a political wish that survives with astonishing strength. Sunlight finally touches the highest tower. The pale stone turns gold near its upper edge, while the streets below remain blue with shadow. The colour moves downward slowly, reaching roofs, statues, and upper windows. People notice. A child points. A porter pauses. A woman selling bread lifts her face towards the warmth, though it offers almost no heat. For one brief moment, the city shares the same light. You stand near the center of the square as Prague enters another winter day. Smoke rises from chimneys. Bells mark the morning hour. Wheels begin their rough passage over frozen stones. Doors open to customers, pupils, officials, patients, petitioners, and friends. The night has not vanished completely. It remains in tired eyes. Cooling workshop tools, hidden letters, empty cups, and the snow that preserves the marks of every journey. Yet daylight brings fresh purpose. A family prepares breakfast. A clerk sharpens his pen. A teacher opens a book. A stable boy fills a singware. A manger. A widow threads her needle. A watchman returns home. The city awakens through thousands of small actions, none grand enough to command history alone, yet together forming the living strength of Prague. You watch the last lantern fade as sunlight spreads across the snow. The old town shines without foul flame now, brightened by mourning, labour, memory, and the quiet courage of ordinary people beginning again. The streets grow softer in your mind now, and every sound begins to drift farther away. The wheels become a low murmur. The bells become gentle circles fading through the pale air. Snow rests peacefully on roofs, windows, towers, and silent courtyards, covering every worry with clean white stillness. As you settle deeper into rest, carry with you the warmth of the bakery, the calm glow of the lanterns, and the patient strength of people who endured the winter together. Tell us in the comments which moment stayed with you most, whether it was the frozen river, the secret meeting, the crowded tavern, or the first sunlight touching the towers. Your thoughts help these old streets live again. When you are ready for another quiet journey through history, choose the next video on the channel and let a different city, century, or forgotten life guide you gently towards sleep. Rest well tonight. May your home feel warm, your breathing remain calm, and your dreams pass softly beneath peaceful skies. Blessings to you and your family.